My Star Empire. This video is purely for entertainment and does not infringe on copyrights or laws. The rights to the novel and image belong to the original author. We do not claim ownership. Don't like waiting and want to listen to this fanfic in full now? Subscribe to our Patreon, where you'll find the best fanfics. Chapter 501 Top Secret S01 Power Armor. Hearing the survivor's words, the captain of the Imperial team's eyes lit up. If this Dyson sphere is really still intact, it should be able to provide enough energy for the space-time shuttle equipment to operate. Once the channel between the two universes is opened, the Empire's army will be able to enter this universe through the channel continuously. Very good, we will build a forward base here first and wait for the arrival of our remaining troops. Those of you who are willing to stay can build the base with us. Those who don't want to stay can leave directly through the channel after the next space channel is opened. The captain of the Imperial team nodded. I will pass the message to the other survivors' camps and let them start preparing to evacuate. I will stay to help you build the forward base. After all, you also need a guide who is familiar with this river system. As your future teammates, you can call me Zhang. The woman closed the inner mask of the helmet, revealing a handsome face with an above-average appearance. 6 days later, with the help of the survivors, the first batch of the Empire team built a simple warehouse with titanium alloy at the exit of the space-time channel, and the air in the warehouse was also evacuated. As the red light began to flash on the terminals of the Imperial soldiers, a dazzling ball of light suddenly appeared in the center of the warehouse. Hurry, hurry, the existence time of the space-time channel is limited. The captain of the Imperial team pushed the 10 survivors who were about to evacuate into the ball of light. One of the 10 survivors was specially arranged by the survivors. Only if this survivor can return safely when the channel is opened next time and prove that what the Imperial soldiers said is true, the remaining survivors will begin to evacuate and tell the Imperial soldiers the location of the Dyson sphere. At the other end of the space-time channel, the 10 survivors who ran out of the space-time channel were surrounded by dozens of Imperial soldiers. After isolating these survivors and questioning them, Mingze learned from these people what happened in another universe. From the history of that universe to the current situation of that universe, the survivors all told the truth. As Mingze expected, what happened in that universe was exactly the same as what he knew in the illusion. When the so-called divine mist invaded his brain, Mingze was also connected to the consciousness of the divine mist. Everything that happened in another universe was integrated into his illusion. However, for some reason, no information about his secrets and the origin of the divine mist appeared. It seems that these information should be hidden by the brain instinctively. Through the storage device entrusted to him by the captain of the Imperial team by the survivors, Mingze also learned what the Imperial soldiers saw and heard after entering this universe. For this reason, the next wave of materials sent to the PX0009E universe was changed from materials for building camps to weapons and equipment for combat. If nothing unexpected happens, the ruins of the level of Dyson sphere should have been in the hands of Shenki Company. They want to regain control of the Dyson sphere and power the space-time shuttle. A fierce battle is inevitable. For this reason, Mingze specially allocated a batch of experimental equipment from the Academy of Sciences to be sent to the PX0009E universe during the next transmission. The next batch of soldiers who traveled through time and space were also replaced by Sith warriors. Sith warriors with Sith power can perform well in both combat and in helping to build forward bases. A month later, 10 Sith warriors wearing heavy armor returned to the PX0009E universe through the space-time channel with this specially arranged survivor. Accompanying these 11 people were 11 heavy alloy boxes, which contain one of the Empire's top secrets, the S01 power armor. In the PX0009E universe, the Imperial soldiers who had been waiting for a long time immediately surrounded them when they saw the space channel open. Originally, they thought that the Imperial soldiers who came this time were also the same as them, but when the second batch of troops arrived through the channel and saw the shoulder straps engraved on these power armors, the Imperial soldiers realized that the most powerful Sith warriors of the Empire came this time. Hello, sir. The 11 soldiers immediately stood up and saluted after seeing the 10 Sith warriors. As Sith warriors of the Empire's special forces, even the most ordinary warriors have the rank of major. The supreme order signed by His Majesty the Emperor, you 11 people immediately change into the Empire's top secret equipment. Here is the consent form for voluntary testing of experimental equipment. You can choose to refuse. The decision is yours. The captain of the Sith warrior team walked out of the team, returned a military salute, and said seriously to the 11 Sith soldiers, "We agree to sign the consent form." The 11 soldiers signed their names on the terminal and dragged the metal box aside. This set of equipment has been modified for the special environment of the PX-0009E universe. You only need to lie on the metal box to complete the change. The captain of the Sith warrior waved his hand after speaking, and the 10 Sith warriors formed a human wall around the soldiers, surrounding them in the middle. The 11 soldiers obediently lay on their respective metal boxes, and a series of stands rose from the metal boxes, isolating the soldiers from the external vacuum environment. At this time, dozens of mechanical arms stretched out from under the metal boxes and began to move continuously on the soldiers. In just 10 seconds, the heavy power armor that the soldiers originally wore turned into parts and was thrown out of the stands by the mechanical arms. When only a thin layer of tights was left on the 11 soldiers, the lid of the metal box suddenly opened to both sides, and the soldiers fell into the metal box. In a place that the Sith warriors could not see with their naked eyes, dozens of syringes with catheters inserted from around the box pierced the soldiers' bodies. Before the soldiers could make a sound, a large amount of black liquid was injected into their bodies through the catheters. The bodies of the soldiers injected with black liquid seemed to have something swimming under their skin, and pieces of unknown protrusions were wriggling under the soldiers' skin, which looked extremely hideous and terrifying. The injection of black liquid lasted only 2 seconds, but the subsequent reaction lasted for a full 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, the soldiers' bodies returned to normal, and the bulges under the skin disappeared. At this time, the metal box installed the parts of the power armor on the soldiers one by one and assembled them together. The Sith warriors outside were unaware of all this. They didn't know what the top secret armor they brought was. 20 minutes later, the 11 soldiers who had finished dressing climbed out of the metal box, and the metal box that had completed its mission also dissolved into a ball of liquid metal. Well, the subscription didn't increase at all. Am I really a salted fish? Cyrillic letter Z. Chapter 502 Dyson Sphere Ruins. At this time, the Sith warriors saw a pair of emotionless eyes through the masks of these soldiers, and there were small black dots swimming in these eyes. This horrific scene made the Sith warriors feel a chill rising from the soles of their feet. Although these 11 Sith soldiers were just consumables cloned specifically for the time-space shuttle mission, what inhumane things did the Empire do to these soldiers? Is it appropriate for your Majesty to do this? Qiu asked beside Li Mingze in the space station of the main universe. There is nothing inhumane about it. We just made a small change to their bodies. These soldiers did not suffer any harm. Everything is to ensure that they can survive. Li Mingze shook his head. After copying the atomic robot captured in the first parallel universe PX-0003W, the Empire created the Empire's molecular robot. Although the technology is far different, this drone can also bring great changes. Although the molecular robot made of different materials cannot form different molecules through different arrangements like the atomic robot, it can be directly combined into various parts. This molecular robot, combined with the Empire's unique biotechnology, is the prototype of the S-01 power armor. In order to ensure that the Empire can send the least troops to produce the greatest lethality in the next battle, this mecha was just designed and manufactured in the laboratory and then transported to the PX-0009E universe. When this power armor is equipped, it will replace some tissues in the human brain with artificial tissues by devouring them, so that the soldiers wearing this power armor will not fall into the hallucinations produced by the brain. Similarly, the fear and other emotions of these soldiers are also automatically blocked and will not be released until the mission is completed. In addition, these molecular robots have formed a layer of titanium alloy armor under the skin of these 11 soldiers, and buffer devices have also been formed around the organs in the soldiers' bodies. The blood vessels are full of medical robots used to repair the soldiers' injuries. The soldiers' bones are also reinforced by the alloys composed of a large number of molecular robots. Coupled with the power armor worn by the soldiers outside, the overall quality of these soldiers has been greatly improved, reaching a non-human level. Moreover, this armor has one last trump card, which will not be exposed until the critical moment, because this trump card is a one-time rampage mode. In the PX-0009E universe, 3 months later. During these 3 months, the Empire sent 30 Sith warriors and 20 technicians and scientists to the PX-0009E universe. The original simple warehouse has also become a large fortress built of titanium alloy. Most areas in the fortress remain in a vacuum state, and only a small part of the living area has oxygen. In addition, A large number of equipment are piled up in the fortress, and research on the divine mist has begun with the help of some surviving scientists. At this time, 11 Imperial soldiers who were scattered in the city also returned to the fortress, and they returned with a small passenger spaceship that could still be started. After the crew died, the spaceship fell into the sea. The seawater absorbed most of the impact force, so that the main body of the spaceship could still be preserved intact. In the following time, the technicians from the Empire focused all their energy on repairing the spaceship. In addition to those who were responsible for vigilance, the Sith warriors also joined the team to repair the spaceship. Since the spaceship came back, all the materials sent by the Empire were used to repair the spaceship. It only took a short time for the spaceship to be repaired by the Empire engineers and survivors, and the outer armor of the spaceship was replaced with titanium alloy armor. In addition, a miniature time space shuttle device was also loaded into the cargo hold of the spaceship. Although the service life of this miniature time space shuttle is only 20 days, once the space channel is opened, the complete version of the time space shuttle will be transported to this universe through the time space channel. 1 month later, the titanium alloy ceiling on the top of the fortress was split open to both sides, and a 100-meter-long teardrop-shaped spaceship was erected by the crane. With a burst of blue flame spurting out from the thruster jet at the tail of the spaceship, the small passenger spaceship slowly rose from the ground and flew into the sky. In the cabin of the spaceship, Zhang Zinayu and a group of Imperial soldiers sat face to face. As the spaceship rose faster and faster, the entire spaceship began to shake slightly, and some wiring even burst into electric sparks. We have 10 minutes to leave the atmosphere. Once we leave the atmosphere, we will be in the side of the warships of the Shanky Company. Now we can only pray that these warships of the Shanky Company are far enough away from us so that we can have the opportunity to jump into hyperspace. Zhang Zinayu sighed lightly. Sure enough, when the spacecraft rushed out of the atmosphere, it was discovered by the warning satellite in orbit. A frigate of the Shanky Company on standby in orbit immediately turned its bow and rushed towards the passenger spacecraft. However, due to the distance between the two sides, before the frigate reached the passenger spacecraft had already left the gravity well of the planet and jumped into hyperspace. At this time, everyone in the passenger spacecraft breathed a sigh of relief. They were now riding on a small and fragile passenger ship. Once the warships of the Shanky Company caught up, they would be finished. We are in trouble next. Zhang Zinayu, who was looking at the star map, suddenly frowned. Oh? What trouble? The captain of the Sith warrior squadron leaned over and asked. Zhang Zinayu kept zooming in on the star map in her hand until it stopped at a circular building next to a star and she spoke. We are about to jump out of hyperspace, which is near the Ambis Ring. As the transportation hub of this star field, the Ambis Ring must be heavily guarded by the Shanky Company. How can we break through the blockade of the Shanky Company? The captain of the Sith warriors also discovered this big problem. That's right. If we can't pass through this Ambis Ring, it will take at least 2 years of uninterrupted hyperspace flight for us to reach the Dyson Sphere ruins. The supplies we carry on our spacecraft are not enough for us to live for 2 years. At most, they can only support so many of us for 8 months. Zhang Zinayu shook her head and turned off the holographic screen. Then we can only outsmart them. The captain of the Sith warriors nodded. A few days later, the passenger spaceship Zhang Zinayu and others were on return to the real universe from hyperspace. As soon as the spaceship appeared, it faced a fleet of the Shanky Company guarding the Ambis Ring. Chapter 503 Chairman of Shanky Company. Send them a distress message, saying that the thruster at the front of our spacecraft is damaged and the spacecraft cannot slow down. Hope they can help us. Zhang Zinayu stood up and came to the cabin of the spacecraft and said to the driver. However, after receiving the distress signal from the passenger ship, the commander of the Shanky Company fleet sneered and ignored it. He found that according to the flight trajectory of this spacecraft, if it could not break, it would plunge into the star, so he decisively stopped his men from taking the next action. Being able to see this poor guy drill into the star by himself can also add a little fun to their boring space duty. In the cabin of the passenger ship, after seeing that the fleet of Shanky Company did not make any action, Zhang Zinayu knew that his plan was successful. Send the activation code immediately after approaching the Ambis Ring and set the coordinates. Zhang Zinayu patted the driver on the shoulder and returned to the cabin. Because these Ambis Rings are indestructible, up to now, the civilization Zhang Zinayu belongs to can only use these Ambis Rings, and has not completely mastered these transmission rings that can cross the galaxy. In this way, under the watchful eyes of the Shanky Company warship, the spaceship rushed towards the star next to the Ambus ring little by little. Who knew that just when the spaceship was about to pass by the Ambus ring suddenly started to operate? Sir, we have intercepted a code sent from the passenger ship in front of the Ambus ring, and the Ambus ring is about to open, a soldier in the bridge of the flagship of the Shanky Company fleet suddenly shouted. The commander of the Shanky Company fleet was suddenly startled, and then his face changed. He had realized that he had been fooled. But it was too late. Under the watchful eyes of many Shanky Company soldiers, the passenger ship turned right and entered the open space channel and disappeared. Half a month later, at the end of the space channel set by Zhang Zhenyu, several Shanky Company destroyers were already waiting here. Suddenly, a small shuttle with a length of only more than 10 meters suddenly left the space channel. The Shanky warships, mistakenly thinking it was an enemy, launched their weapons that had already been fully charged. By the time they found out that the first one to come out was just a bait ship, it was too late. When all the attacks fell on the shuttle, the passenger ship where the Imperial forces were located entered the real universe from the space channel. The passenger ship that had just appeared did not stop at all, and directly drove out of the encirclement formed by several Shanky destroyers, while the weapons of many Shanky Company warships were cooling down. Hyperspace engine charging completed. Countdown, 10, 9, 8. In the tense countdown of the Imperial people, the hyperspace engine of the passenger ship finally completed the charging before the weapons of the Shanky Company warships were fired again. In the angry eyes of the soldiers of the Shanky Company, the passenger ship disappeared again. A dead star system 8,000 light-years away from the destination Dyson sphere. There are no planets in this star system except an old star. Countless asteroid fragments fill this star system and slowly revolve around the star. These asteroid fragments have completely blocked the light of this star. If it were not for gravity detection, no one would know that there is an ancient star system here. At the very center of these asteroid fragments, next to the star of this star system, there is a spherical space station with a diameter of 6,500 kilometers. Its size is close to the size of Mars in the Earth era. In the middle and upper part of this spherical space station, in a room where you can see the red giant star not far away through a huge floor-to-ceiling window, an old man is holding his chin with one hand, staring blankly at the red giant star not far away, wondering what he is thinking. Report to the chairman. Our 9861st Patrol Fleet has sent important information. Suddenly, a woman's voice came from the door of the room. Come in. The old man turned his chair with his back to the star and set his eyes on the secretary, who entered the room. According to the report of this patrol team, a small passenger spaceship broke through 2 layers of blockade and is heading towards the Dyson sphere of the ancient civilization. We initially suspect that the other party may want to use this Dyson sphere ruins to do something. The secretary paused and told all the information. Oh, you mean the Dyson sphere ruins that is about to be scrapped and has been transformed into a tourist attraction? Don't pay attention to them. We have deployed 20,000 soldiers and 5 million combat robots on this ruins. If they want to use this Dyson sphere, they must break through these 5 million troops and enter the control room we occupy. The possibility of their success. Non-existent. The old man waved his hand and said disapprovingly. Then I will inform the defense forces at the Dyson sphere to prepare. The secretary nodded and turned to leave the room. The old man turned around again and placed his hand with his palm, facing up on the armrest of the chair. 2 groups of divine mist suddenly emerged from his palm and rolled actively in the air. At this time, the small passenger spaceship where the Imperial troops were located had left the hyperspace and arrived near the Dyson sphere ruins. Not far away, the Dyson sphere that covered an entire star was flashing with blue light, and the octagonal space station at the top of this building was undoubtedly the control room of this Dyson sphere. Although after thousands of years, this Dyson sphere has become somewhat dilapidated without maintenance, it still maintains a minimum level of operation. Now all the energy it generates is used to operate the equipment on the Dyson sphere and the dozens of large holiday space cities orbiting in its orbit. Before the outbreak of the divine fog, the rich people in the entire galaxy would take interstellar flights to visit here to see the architectural wonders of ancient civilizations. At that time, the tourism industry here was extremely developed, and dozens of space cities could accommodate tens of billions of tourists at a time. It is precisely because of this that there are no heavy weapons on the ruins of this Dyson sphere, only some interception laser launchers to defend against meteorites. You have never seen a scenic spot with a turret installed. The current Dyson Sphere tourist spot no longer has the original scenery. Dozens of space cities have been completely occupied by the divine fog, and the people in the space cities and space stations have died in their sleep. Now the only place that is not occupied by the divine fog is the Dyson Sphere Control Center, isolated by vacuum, which is a large space station floating above the Dyson Sphere. Because they had no heavy weapons, the spaceship where the Imperial forces were located flew directly along the surface of the Dyson Sphere towards the control room. The people who thought they were in a hidden state did not know that their every move was under the surveillance of the Shanky Company. Chapter 504, Desperate Situation. We are about to enter the airspace of the control center. Everyone prepare to airdrop. With the order from the captain of the Sith warriors, all the Sith warriors and soldiers began to check their equipment. At this time, the captain of the Sith warriors handed a badge-like device to Zhang Zinayu. Take this with you. You may need it later. The captain of the Sith warriors did not say anything more and turned to stand at the airlock door of the spacecraft. A few seconds later, the passenger spacecraft arrived above the huge Dyson Sphere Control Center, and the airlock door of the spacecraft was completely opened at this moment. The Sith warriors did not hesitate at all and jumped off the spacecraft following the captain's figure. The last ones left were 11 ordinary Sith soldiers and Zhang Zinayu. After looking at each other, they also jumped off the spacecraft. Although this Dyson Sphere is full of positions formed by anti-gravity devices, some of the huge gravity from the stars has not been completely offset. It is precisely because of this weak gravity that the Sith soldiers can jump directly to the top platform of the control center. After Zhang Zinayu, the last person, arrived, the Sith soldiers walked to the front of the team with their rifles. The group walked for 20 minutes on the top platform of the space station before they saw a hatch protruding outward. As a soldier inserted the storage device in his hand into the panel next to the hatch, the heavy alloy door began to sink underground. How did you get the password of this control center? Zhang Zinayu asked in shock. Nothing, just a gift from the Queen. The captain of the Sith warriors chuckled twice and walked into the control center first. Unlike what they expected, the Empire group did not encounter any danger along the way, and easily came to a central hub hall of this space station. Something is wrong, don't you think it's too quiet here? Zhang Zinayu frowned and said to the captain of the Sith warriors. Yes, it stands to reason that we should encounter some soldiers blocking us, but our journey is too smooth. The captain nodded slightly in agreement. At this moment, the isolation doors around the hall suddenly opened, and a row of silver humanoid combat robots lined up in a square array and walked into the hall from the gate. In just a few tens of seconds, the hall, which was thousands of meters long and wide, was full of humanoid combat robots. These robots holding rifles surrounded the Imperial team tightly in the middle. At this time, a square team of thousands of people walked out of the passage on the second floor of the hall and dispersed into the corridor on the second floor of the hall. Welcome. Welcome. I'm very curious, what are you survivors doing in this dilapidated Dyson Sphere site? A man who looked like an officer walked out of the square team and stood by the handrail of the corridor on the second floor. We are just here to find some supplies, Zhang Zinayu said loudly, pretending to be calm. In fact, she was desperate at this moment. Surrounded by so many soldiers and robots, she didn't think she and her people would have a chance to escape. If you can tell me obediently, I can consider sparing your lives, especially you, Miss Zhang Zinayu. The officer looked at Zhang Zinayu and teased her twice. How did you know? Zhang Zinayu's face suddenly changed. Miss Zhang. Since you had a microplastic surgery on your face and fled to that planet, until now, your every move has been under our surveillance. Your father is very concerned about your health. The officer walked down the stairs from the corridor on the second floor. He is not my father. You just want to kill me. When my spaceship left the space channel, don't tell me that those warships and shells were coming to take me back. Zhang Zinayu didn't believe these people's lies at all. If you say that, the chairman will be very sad. Everyone get ready. The officer stretched his right hand into the air and shouted. There was a sound of loading bullets, and the soldiers and robots of Shenki Company opened the safety of their electromagnetic rifles and aimed at the soldiers of the Empire and Zhang Zinayu. You all know that he is no longer himself. Why do you still work for him? Zhang Zinayu roared unwillingly. Working for him, we can live safely. Sorry, the officer sighed and raised his hand and fell fiercely. Miss Zhang, come back. The captain of the Sith warriors pulled Zhang Zinayu back to the team. Just as the bullets from the rifles of the divinely inspired soldiers left the barrels, an invisible shield suddenly rose in the Imperial squad, and all the flying bullets stopped in the air. Our Sith power is limited, we must get rid of them as soon as possible, otherwise we will not be able to hold on for a while. The captain of the Sith warriors pointed his hands at the air outside and gritted his teeth. Hearing this, the 11 Sith soldiers fired wildly at the surroundings with their rifles in their hands. One robot after another was torn to pieces by bullets, but the robots behind them quickly replaced them, and the robots that were originally destroyed were also pulled into the team and disappeared. Give up, we have millions of troops. How much ammunition can you have? The officer of the divinely inspired troops folded his arms and sneered. Activate the rampage mode of the S-01 power armor. Now. Immediately, seeing that the situation was getting worse and worse, the captain of the Sith warriors shouted loudly at the 11 Sith soldiers. Yes, sir. 11 Sith soldiers pressed a button on their wrists, but nothing happened. Sir, it doesn't work. Before the Sith soldier finished speaking, his body began to swell. In just a few seconds, the Sith soldiers, who were less than 2 meters tall, swelled to more than 3 meters tall. The armor on these soldiers had been stretched out by the bulging muscles, and their original appearance could not be seen at all. But this was not the end. The helmets of the 11 Sith soldiers suddenly opened and retracted, revealing a number of alien heads covered with sharp teeth and shells. Then the arms of these soldiers began to grow and deform. The left arm turned into a huge sickle flashing with cold light, and the right hand turned into a long thorn. In addition, these soldiers' arms also grew sharp barbs, and a thick tail grew on the buttocks. The tail was covered with a layer of bone armor flashing with a metallic luster, and at the end of the tail was a triangular cone-like weapon. Then the 11 Sith soldiers who had transformed into monsters roared, and their eyeballs were suddenly covered with the black. As the hind legs of the 11 Sith soldiers suddenly kicked the ground, the 11 monsters rushed into the group of divine soldiers on the second floor at lightning speed. Speed 5 times the speed of sound. The Sith warrior captain, who was shocked by the changes of the Sith soldiers, looked at the measurement data after hearing a loud bang. Chapter 505 Rampage Mode. 11 monsters transformed from Sith soldiers rushed into the soldiers of the Shanky Company at 5 times the speed of sound, like wolves entering a flock of sheep, and soon killed and abused all the soldiers who had not yet reacted. The scimitars in the left hands of these 11 monsters could easily cut off the soldiers wearing power armor, and the spikes in their right hands could pierce through several soldiers. With extremely sharp weapons, an explosive speed of 5 times the speed of sound, and barbs everywhere on their bodies and powerful tail vertebrae, the efficiency of killing the 11 monsters was terrifyingly high. The bullets fired by the Shanky soldiers who reacted to these monsters were all bounced off by the armor on the monsters that reflected the metallic luster, leaving not even a shallow pit on the monster's armor. In just 5 seconds, 2,000 Shanky soldiers were slaughtered and abused. The Shanky officers downstairs were so scared that their legs were weak and they could not move at all. At this time, the monsters who had dealt with the enemies upstairs jumped from the upstairs into the robot army. As soon as the monsters that had just landed raised their heads, they met the eyes of the Sith warriors and Zhang Zinayu. The deep black eyes in the monsters' eyes, like black holes, made Zhang Zinayu and others shudder. However, after these monsters glanced at Zhang Zinayu and others, they ignored them and turned to rush into the group of robot soldiers. Soon they crushed these robots like autumn wind sweeping fallen leaves, leaving only the wreckage all over the ground. Even if the subsequent robot troops continued to pour in, it was useless. The speed at which the robots were killed was much faster than the speed at which they entered. At this time, the Sith warriors had time to rest and recover the Sith power that had just been consumed when resisting the bullets. They now understood why the Empire had told them to wear this badge at all times before setting off. Originally, they thought it was a recorder for recording, but they didn't expect that the purpose of these badges was to prevent them from being killed by their own people. How long will this mutation last? A Sith warrior asked the captain of the Sith warriors quietly. I don't know either. The higher-ups didn't tell me the specific situation. The captain of the Sith warriors shook his head and said regretfully. A few minutes later, the movements of the 11 monsters began to slow down, obviously because they were running out of energy. Just when Zhang Zinayu and the Sith warriors thought that the Sith soldiers' rampage time was about to end, the 11 monsters suddenly jumped back to the second floor of the hall. In the shocked eyes of everyone, the monsters tore open the power armor of the corpses on the ground and began to devour the corpses. The effect of this action was very obvious. After devouring dozens of corpses, the monsters became energetic again. Not only that, but even their size became a full circle larger. Just when the Sith warriors of the Empire and Zhang Zhenyu thought that they had finished eating, they saw that these monsters began to devour the armor that the divine soldiers had just peeled off. After devouring these power armors, a thin layer of metal shell condensed on the surface of the 11 monsters' bodies. The bodies that had become a little bloated due to eating also returned to their original size. Obviously, they devoured the corpses in excess to provide energy for swallowing metal. What kind of monster did the Empire create? The Sith warriors were shocked beyond words at this moment. If these monsters can form an army, whose ground forces can be the opponent of the Empire, especially in a complex urban environment, the combat capabilities of these monsters can even be multiplied several times. The monsters that have completed the resupply jump into the robot group again and started a new round of killing and abuse. A few hours later, under the monsters' slaughter efficiency comparable to that of supersonic harvesters, the robots pouring into the hall began to gradually become scarce. It seems that some robots that are too far away have not arrived in time. Let the spacecraft start docking with the space station. We can start our plan. Seeing that the number of enemies is getting scarcer and scarcer, the captain of the Sith warriors sighed and began to arrange tasks. A few minutes later, the monsters with no enemies to kill gathered together, but their bodies suddenly lost support and slowly fainted on the ground in the eyes of everyone. The body began to shrink at a speed visible to the naked eye. In just a few seconds, these monsters turned into human form again. At this time, the experimental data about this power armor was sent to the captain's terminal. A person can only use the armor's rampage mode once in his life. In rampage mode, the molecular robots replace the host's main tissues and organs and reassemble more advanced artificial tissues. The host's body shell and weapons are composed of molecular robots made of ring-world metal in advance, and their hardness is almost the same as ring-world metal. In addition, the host also has the unique combat instinct and recovery swallowing ability of the alien, which can quickly restore combat effectiveness by swallowing organisms. After improvement, it also has the ability to swallow metal with molecular robots. The results of this experiment, perfect. The relevant data has been saved to the database. The captain of the Sith warriors looked at the report and muttered to himself, his voice so low that no one could hear it. What happened just now? At this time, the 11 Sith soldiers who fainted on the ground began to slowly wake up, and their eyes were still full of confusion. The captain of the Sith warriors found that the eyes of these soldiers had regained the spirit of normal people, instead of the original cold and emotionless. It seems that once they have experienced the rampage mode, the molecular robots that restrain their emotions have been scrapped and cannot be used, and these 11 Sith soldiers have returned to being ordinary people. I don't think you want to know what just happened. Come on, get up, let's move on. The captain extended his hand to the Sith soldier sitting on the ground. Without the interference of the enemy, the group soon arrived at the gate of the Dyson Sphere Control Center. The alloy door several meters thick completely separated everyone from the control room behind. But this was not a problem for the Sith team, who were also from the same background. After inserting the storage device with Tianyi authority into the control panel next to the gate began to open to both sides. When everyone entered the control room, they found that the original control consoles in the control room had been smashed to pieces, and various electronic parts were scattered everywhere. There was no doubt that these consoles could no longer be used. What should we do? This Dyson sphere should have a spare control room. Zhang Zhenyu supported his forehead and said helplessly. No need, we can wake up the management artificial intelligence of this Dyson sphere, the captain of the Sith warriors said and lifted a piece of floor under everyone's feet. Under this floor is the maintenance well in the control room. Once the console is damaged, the Dyson sphere can be controlled through the external terminal here, and the control intelligence of the Dyson sphere can also be manually awakened here. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 506, Time and Space Channel opened. After the floor was lifted, a vertical passage with a diameter of 2 meters was revealed. There were all kinds of lines under the passage. Wait for me here, the captain of the Sith warriors said and jumped down the maintenance well. A moment later, The lights in the control room suddenly went out, and a round platform rose in the open space in the center of the room. A blue projection appeared in the center of the round platform. Dyson Sphere Management Intelligence Xiaodai is at your service. The blue projection gradually solidified into a girl with twin ponytails. Xiaodai, scan the integrity of the entire Dyson Sphere immediately. Zhang Zinayu hesitated and ordered tentatively. Received. The scan has begun. The amount of calculation is too huge. Please wait. Xiaodai, the artificial intelligence with twin ponytails, closed her eyes after saying this. After a few seconds, she opened her eyes again. The Dyson Sphere is 32.17% intact, and is already in a dangerous state. The energy absorption array is 18.83% intact, and the energy conversion module is 56.71% intact. The energy available is only 10% of the intact state. In addition, all ports on the Dyson Sphere are damaged, all satellite cities are out of contact, and all weapons on the Dyson Sphere are offline. The only thing that is intact is the control center. Xiaodai explained the current status of the Dyson Sphere. This Dyson Sphere can obviously provide 10% of energy. Why don't you use it instead of using it as a tourist attraction? The captain asked Zhang Zinayu curiously. You know, this 10% is not ordinary. It can at least supply a prosperous administrative star. You need high-level permissions to use this Dyson Sphere, and we only have civilian permissions. We can only mobilize 2% of this 10%, so we transformed it into a tourist attraction, and this energy is also used in the holiday space city. Zhang Zinayu shrugged. Use high-level permissions to immediately activate the Dyson Sphere at maximum power, and concentrate all energy on the spacecraft docked in the control center port. Captain Sith ordered the artificial intelligence Xiaodai. The order has been accepted, the high-level permissions have been approved, and the Dyson Sphere has started to run at full power. Xiaodai nodded, and everyone began to feel waves of vibrations under their feet. An explosion occurred in Area D01B and caused a fire. The explosion and fire have been controlled. An explosion occurred in Area J542F. The explosion is spreading, and it is expected to be separated from the explosion module in 10 seconds. H24 Following a burst of alarms, holographic screens appeared around everyone, and the screens were densely packed with red warning messages. It was obvious that the Dyson Sphere, which had been dormant for thousands of years, had just started to run at full power, causing some areas to fail. The energy absorption rate begins to rise, 11.34%, 11.35%. All modules of the Dyson Sphere are activated, all automatic defense devices are turned on, maintenance drone modules are activated, and self-repair modules are activated. All 51% of the online maintenance drones of the Dyson Sphere have begun to work, and the Dyson Sphere has begun to repair itself. The estimated time to complete all repairs is 130 years. A large number of traces of unknown robot activities have been found inside the Dyson Sphere equipment. Do you want to start the removal program? Xiaodai suddenly opened his eyes and asked the captain. Start. The captain nodded. He didn't expect that the basic self-defense device of this Dyson Sphere had not been completely damaged. In this way, the Shenki Company troops inside this Dyson Sphere would not have to trouble himself and others to do it. At this time, the Shenki Company soldiers inside the Dyson Sphere were constantly converging, and they had no idea what was going on. Suddenly, all the lights around them went out, leaving the Shenki Company troops who were marching in a daze. Then, an invisible position began to move forward from the end of the passage. Wherever the position passed, all the robots collapsed to the ground with electric light. The soldiers of the Shenki Company wearing power armor also found themselves unable to move. The power armor had lost its ability to move. However, this was not the most fatal thing. The soldiers of the Shenki Company were horrified to find that the entire corridor had been sucked out, and the power armor had completely stopped for unknown reasons. They would die of lack of oxygen in just a few minutes. However, artificial intelligence had no mercy. Seeing the faces of these soldiers distorted by lack of oxygen, it was not touched at all, and quietly waited for these soldiers to die completely. Until the last scanning device scanned these soldiers and found no signs of life, the air was re-injected into the channel. All unknown forces in the Dyson Sphere have been cleared. The captain and others soon received Xiaodai's report. At this time, the Dyson Sphere had been activated to maximum power, and the huge energy that was enough to destroy the world rolled in the energy channel and surged towards the port of the control center. However, When these energies surged to the outside of the port, they stopped, not because of other reasons, but because the passenger ships docked in the port did not design energy channels that could accommodate such huge energy. Once this energy flows into the passenger ship, it will be blown into a pile of powder without exception. The plane is stopped. The risk is beyond expectation. You must transfer the equipment that needs energy in the spacecraft to the energy station in the Dyson sphere. As the progress bar on the screen in front of everyone suddenly stopped, Xiaodai on the side reminded them. "Let's go." The Sith captain waved to the Sith warriors and took the lead to walk towards the spacecraft. Tens of minutes later, 10 Sith warriors used the power of Sith to carry a device that was nearly 10 meters long and wide from the port to an energy center on the Dyson sphere. As the energy transmission line was connected to this time-space shuttle device, the energy in the Dyson sphere immediately flowed into the time-space shuttle along the energy transmission line. Everyone, disperse and prepare to start the time-space channel. With the captain's order, everyone dispersed around the hall. Energy access was detected, meeting the equipment startup requirements. The space-time channel is being constructed. The space-time anchor point is found, and the connection with the main universe space-time anchor point is being started. The space-time anchor point coordinates are being changed. The space-time channel is ready to open 54,321. The space-time channel is open. The space-time anchor point connection is complete, and the space-time channel is stabilizing. The stabilization duration is expected to be 240 hours. Accompanied by a violent space fluctuation, a white vortex appeared in the center of the hull of the energy hub. This white vortex became stable as time passed, and finally turned into a mirror. A few seconds later, teams of fully armed Sith soldiers rushed out of the mirrored space-time gate. Save. Nice to meet you. Imperial Marine Lieutenant Colonel Wu Feng is here to report. An officer walked out of the Imperial soldier queue and saluted the captain of the Sith warriors. Chapter 507, The Empire Collapses. At the same time, in the main universe where Li Mingze was, the space-time shuttle center number 01 was surrounded by hundreds of large spherical buildings, and tens of thousands of transport ships were constantly taking off and landing here. Teams of Imperial soldiers were trotting in the passages between the buildings with rifles in hand. At the portal, dozens of transport vehicles loaded with supplies were waiting for the soldiers in front to finish. With the opening of the space-time channel between the two universes with different time flows were like two bubbles stuck together, and the time flows between the two universes became consistent. Li Mingze, who had been prepared for a long time, immediately ordered the troops to go to the PX-0009E universe through the space channel without stopping. According to his plan, within the 10 days that the simple space shuttle device can last, the Empire will transport up to 20,000 soldiers, 5,000 engineers and technicians, and related equipment to the PX-0009E universe. A newly manufactured space-time channel stabilizer was also disassembled into parts that filled hundreds of transport vehicles. The engineers of the Empire will reassemble the space-time channel stabilizer in the Dyson sphere of the PX-0009E universe and replace the original simple space-time shuttle. At that time, the two universes will become a whole, and the various technologies and resources in the PX-0009E universe will also be used by the Empire. Li Mingze, who is very curious about this universe, of course personally passed through the space-time channel and came to the PX-0009E universe. His hundreds of clones had been transported to various places in the Dyson sphere by the advanced troops and hidden. By the time he passed through the space-time channel, the Imperial troops on the PX-0009E side had completely controlled the Dyson Sphere Control Center. "Welcome, Your Majesty." A team of Sith warriors stationed next to the space-time channel hurriedly stood at attention and saluted after seeing Li Mingze. Such a big move also alarmed Zhang Zinayu and others who were discussing Shenki Company on the side. "Hi, Your Majesty." Zhang Zinayu was a little embarrassed when she met a leader of a civilization for the first time. She wiped her hand on the power armor twice before reaching out to Li Mingze. When she reached it into the air, she remembered that their status was not equal, but it was not easy to withdraw her hand at this time. Fortunately, Li Mingze did not reject her because of the difference in status, but stretched out his hand and shook it with Zhang Zinayu. "Zhang Zinayu, long time no see." Li Mingze smiled lightly and put his hand back behind his back. "Your Majesty, why do you say long time no see? I don't think we have met." Zhang Zinayu was confused. She had never seen the Emperor of the Sith Empire in her memory. Nothing. We have prepared a rest room for you at the other end of the space-time channel. If you are tired, you can go and have a good rest. Li Mingze patted Zhang Zhenhao on the shoulder and walked towards the control room. He was now full of doubts about this Dyson sphere. If nothing unexpected happened, this Dyson sphere should also be built by his Sith Empire in this universe. But what happened to the Sith Empire in this universe? Why did the huge Sith Empire suddenly fall apart? These questions lingered in his mind. After walking for 10 minutes, Li Mingze came to the control center of the Dyson sphere. Unexpectedly, as soon as he stepped into the control room, the projection of Xiaodai suddenly shook when he saw his figure. Your Majesty. You didn't. Xiaodai greets Your Majesty. Your Majesty's glory shines on the stars. Xiaodai immediately bowed and saluted Li Mingze. Your Majesty, it's too dangerous for you to be here. The rebels may attack at any time. Please go to the shelter immediately. Xiaodai seemed to be worried about something. After looking around, he said nervously. Don't pretend. I know you are definitely not an artificial intelligence without the ability to think independently. Li Mingze pulled a chair from the side and sat down. You found me. Xiaodai's expression became serious, and his nervous expression disappeared. As far as I know, you are not His Majesty himself. Although I don't know where you got the highest authority, as far as I know, His Majesty's original body died in the last battle. Xiaodai waved her hand, and a projected chair appeared behind her. She sat on it leisurely and looked at Li Mingze with curiosity. You can treat me as your Emperor's original body, and the one who sacrificed is just my copy. Do you understand what I mean? Now tell me, what has the Sith Empire you are in experienced? Why did it suddenly collapse completely? Li Mingze asked the question that he was most concerned about. It's hard to explain in a few words. Under the leadership of His Majesty the Emperor, our Sith Empire gathered the strength of all races in the Milky Way to repel the invading Zerg troops. Then our Sith Empire peacefully annexed all civilizations, and the Empire entered a period of rapid development. In just a few hundred years, our technological level has continued to rise. New technologies are developed every year, and a large number of relics of previous civilizations in the Milky Way have also been discovered and analyzed. We quickly built wormhole highways throughout the Milky Way, and people can reach any star system in the Milky Way in a very short time. With the continuous development of our technology, economy, and military, the small Milky Way can no longer meet the needs of the Empire's continuous development, and the Empire began to expand to the surrounding galaxies. It took only a few hundred years for us to spread colonies throughout several surrounding galaxies, and we also built super-large wormhole highways between several galaxies for cross-galactic navigation. At this time, the Empire had developed to an unprecedented peak, but suddenly one day, Queen Tianyi, who helped His Majesty the Emperor maintain the unity of the Empire, disappeared without a trace. His Majesty the Emperor has lost control of all electronic equipment produced in the Empire. Bad signs have begun to appear in the colonies. However, since His Majesty the Emperor was originally very popular among the people and had supreme prestige in the army, no accidents occurred in the first few hundred years, and the huge empire was running as smoothly as when Lord Tianyi was still there, but that's just an appearance. After losing the restraint of Lord Tianyi, some officials of the empire began to unscrupulously use the power in their hands to seek personal gain. Although the Shadow Department was able to bring these officials to justice at the beginning, the territory of the empire is too large. It spreads across the 5 major river systems and has more than 10 million colonized planets. It is simply not something that the existing government can manage. The development of the empire began to slow down, and all kinds of corruption and bribery emerged in an endless stream. Xiaodai sighed. Chapter 508, Expanding the Space-Time Channel. If it were just this, it wouldn't be a big deal. But as time went by, officials began to become bolder. They bribed officers, and made the army work for them secretly, and the emperor, who had lost his eyes and ears, knew nothing about this, and was soon sidelined by his officials. His Majesty also lost control of most of the fleets. In the first 100 years before the collapse of the empire, chaos broke out. A large number of colonies began to revolt because they were dissatisfied with the inefficiency, greed, monopoly and corruption of the imperial government. In just 30 years, the entire empire was secretly divided into 3 major areas, namely the Royalist Star Zone, which is mainly composed of some colonies in the Milky Way close to the capital of the empire. The second is the Triangle Contract Organization composed of some powerful officials and military officers. This organization controls nearly 40% of the Empire's resources and factories, and the third is the New World Alliance composed of the rebellious colonies. They aim to overthrow the old government and re-establish interstellar order. The three major factions were originally just constantly fighting small-scale battles in secret, but who would have thought that one day, a war broke out? This war became the fuse for the complete collapse of the Empire. Several fleets of the New World Alliance launched a surprise attack on the Star Zone where the Royalists were located, and more than 300 billion civilians who supported His Majesty the Emperor were massacred. This battle directly triggered a war between the three major factions, and a war that lasted for 50 years broke out. During these 50 years, the fleets of the three parties were able to restrain the use of weapons of mass destruction at the beginning, but later on they had completely ignored the survival of the people. And all kinds of doomsday weapons were used on the battlefield. The huge empire occupying 5 star systems had 99% of its colonies completely destroyed in just 50 years. The traces of the empire's civilization were completely wiped out from several star systems, leaving only a pile of powder produced by the explosion. Until the last battle, the fleets of the New World Alliance, the Triangle Pact Fleet, and the Royalist Fleet fought a final decisive battle in the capital of the empire. In the final decisive battle, His Majesty the Emperor died, the three fleets perished together, the capital star of the Empire was completely blown into an asteroid belt, and the entire Sith Empire completely disappeared in the universe, as if it had never appeared. Leaving only wormhole highways throughout the galaxy, the Dyson sphere I was in charge of was repeatedly attacked by the three parties because it was a strategic facility, resulting in most of it being damaged. 90% of the heavy weapons equipped on the Dyson sphere were offline, and the remaining 10% was kept by me for emergency use, but no one expected that after my Dyson sphere was riddled with holes, the three parties actually gave up occupying this nearly scrapped Dyson sphere, and I also entered standby mode, passively receiving messages from all over the Empire and secretly observing everything. Until later, after Lady Eva gave me the emotional program, she erased her data and followed His Majesty the Emperor. Xiaodai couldn't help but shed tears when she said this. The Sith Empire has not disappeared. It will survive tenaciously in the endless universe. There are still thousands of Sith Empires struggling in the universe in this world. Are you interested in returning to the embrace of the Empire and helping me prevent this Sith Empire from repeating the same mistakes? Li Mingze stretched out his hand to Xiaodai. I also want to have a home again. Meet Your Majesty. Xiaodai stood up and shook Li Mingze's hand. Your Majesty, I have put all the remaining 10% of heavy weapons that I have hidden online. Your empire can develop with peace of mind under the protection of the Dyson sphere. Xiaodai waved his hand in the air again, and a hologram of the Dyson sphere appeared in the air. It can be seen that tens of thousands of artillery batteries slowly rose from the ground in several major directions of the Dyson sphere, and the muzzles of these artillery batteries all pointed to the starry sky. The remaining 100,000 heavy fortress guns and 1 million main guns on the Dyson sphere can ensure absolute safety within a light-year radius. Even if the enemy has a large fleet, it can't easily capture this place, Xiaodai said proudly to Li Mingze. Perfect. What materials are needed to repair the defense function of the Dyson sphere? I will arrange priority transportation, Li Mingze nodded. Need. Xiaodai told all the relevant materials needed to initially restore the defense capability of the Dyson sphere. Looking at the long list of materials in front of him, Li Mingze was overwhelmed. It was impossible to transport so many materials in such a small space channel. I know what you are worried about. In fact, my energy absorption device is still 18% intact. If you repair the energy conversion device first, I can provide more energy, then we can expand the diameter of the space channel so that it can accommodate more people and objects, Xiaodai suddenly reminded. I will go back and order them to prepare to expand the diameter of the space-time channel. Li Mingze turned and left the control room. Looking at Li Mingze's hurriedly leaving back, Xiaodai smiled happily and disappeared. For her, it felt very good to be able to go home. Just as Li Mingze was about to pass through the space-time channel, Zhang Zhenyu suddenly called him. Your Majesty, I have something to report to you. Zhang Zhenyu suddenly stopped in front of Li Mingze. What is it? Li Mingze stopped and looked at the woman who had appeared in his hallucination. I have to tell you something, a very important thing. Zhang Zhenyu pulled Li Mingze to the corner of the hall. I am actually the only daughter of the chairman of the Shenki company, but my father is no longer himself. He seems to have become a completely different person. I couldn't stand some of the things he did, so I escaped from Shenki company. But I didn't expect them to be so cruel. After finding out that I didn't stay in the survivor camp obediently, they wanted to kill me. Maybe I know too many secrets, and only the dead can make the secrets disappear forever. Zhang Zhenyu stared into Li Mingze's eyes and said slowly, I know a backup headquarters space station of Shenki Company. When the headquarters of Shenki Company was besieged and destroyed by many companies, my father somehow activated the evolution of the divine fog, and fled to the backup headquarters after the divine fog erupted. I think, if we can enter this space station and capture him alive, we should be able to know the truth of it all. Zhang Zhenyu's eyes were full of determination. It seemed that this girl wanted to find out the real reason for the outbreak of the divine fog. After we expand the space-time channel, we will transport the warship parts here for assembly. Only after we have accumulated a sufficient number of warships will we go to the headquarters of the Shenki Company you mentioned. And our most important task now is to gain a firm foothold here. Li Mingze patted Zhang Zhenyu's shoulder heavily, turned around and entered the space-time channel. Chapter 509, The Arrival of the Divine Fleet. In the chairman's office at the backup headquarters of Shenki Company. The chairman of Shenki Company was lying on his chair with his eyes closed, and suddenly a knock on the door woke him up. Chairman, we just lost contact with a garrison on the Dyson Sphere. The female secretary walked into the office in a panic and reported. Oh? My dear daughter actually has such a great ability. The chairman suddenly opened his eyes. The female secretary saw the white mist rolling in the chairman's eyes and her body trembled suddenly, but she did not show a trace of surprise or fear. According to the last message sent back by the fortress, your daughter seems to have found a very powerful force. This is the video of their attack on the fortress. Please take a look. The female secretary handed a terminal to the chairman. The video showed the Sith warriors using the power of the Sith to support the barrier, and the monsters transformed by the 11 Imperial soldiers were killing people everywhere. Seeing some familiar power armor in the video, the chairman suddenly narrowed his eyes. I didn't expect you to dare to come back again. Order all the warships in the headquarters to prepare to set off. I will meet them in person. The chairman waved his hand and stood up from his chair. The secretary saw that the chairman's feet did not touch the ground, but were suspended in the air 5 centimeters above the ground. However, she did not dare to speak or show any strange expression. Several secretaries before her became cold corpses in the trash can of the headquarters because of their excessive curiosity. 2 days later, a fleet consisting of a dreadnought, 10 battleships and 20 cruisers left the port of the backup headquarters of the Shenki Company and flew towards the Ambus ring leading to the Dyson Sphere. At this time, on the Dyson Sphere, with the efforts of many Imperial scientists and technicians, the diameter of the space-time channel has been widened to an astonishing 20 meters. The width that could only accommodate 1 transport vehicle has now become able to accommodate 6 transport vehicles in parallel at the same time. As the space-time channel widens, the throughput of the space-time channel has greatly increased. A large amount of materials for repairing the Dyson Sphere is being transported in continuously, and the Imperial Army stationed in various parts of the Dyson Sphere has reached an astonishing 100,000. The originally broken Dyson Sphere is being repaired bit by bit. Although it is impossible to completely repair it in a short period of time, its most basic self-defense and protection capabilities can be repaired as soon as possible. At this time, the Dyson Sphere Control Center has completely changed its appearance. The corridors of the Control Center space station have been repainted with white anti-corrosion paint, and some empty spaces in the corridors have been placed with green landscape plants. And some vacant rooms and halls have been transformed into cabins with various functions. The soldiers stationed on the Dyson Sphere also obtained independent cabins for 2 people, and the entire space station has regained vitality. Unexpectedly, just when the construction of the Empire's forward base on the Dyson Sphere had just started to improve, the Ambus ring not far from the star system where the Dyson Sphere was located began to operate. Something is coming out. Looking at the abnormal readings on the display, Zhang Zhenyu said with a serious expression. Shenki Company finally came. Yes, the activation of the Dyson Sphere and the opening of the space-time channel, how could such a big movement be hidden from them? Li Mingze sighed. He originally thought that he could develop for a longer time, but he didn't expect Shenki Company to react so quickly. 3 days later, a dreadnought led a fleet of 10 battleships and 20 cruisers to the periphery of the star system where the Dyson Sphere was located. Facing a fleet of this size, if it were placed in the main universe, Li Mingze would not take it seriously at all. Such a small number of battleships and a Titan would be enough to crush them. But now, They are in another universe, let alone Titans. They don't even have a frigate. Now they can only rely on the defensive weapons on the Dyson sphere. I don't know if the accuracy and power of these weapons are still so strong after so many years. Mingze thought that the other party would attack directly, but unexpectedly, the fleet of Shenki Company just stopped at the periphery of the star system without any action. Your Majesty, we received the other party's communication. The officer next to Mingze suddenly turned his head and said. Mingze nodded. Let them in, we will meet these people from Shenki Company. The upper body image of an old man suddenly appeared on the large screen in the center of the control room. Although the old man was old, he was full of energy and spirit. His strong body showed that he was still strong. Long time no see, His Majesty the Emperor of the Sith Empire. I wonder if you are doing well after we parted a few months ago? The old man's casual words made Mingze's pupils shrink. You are. Mingze opened his mouth, but did not say his guess, but he knew that the other party must have understood what he meant. Yes, I am the Shenwu that entered your brain a few months ago. The old man suddenly opened his eyes, and the white Shenwu in his eyeballs was still rolling. Are you occupying the body of the chairman of Shenki Company? Mingze was a little terrified, but at the same time he was glad that only a small amount of his energy entered the main universe at that time, otherwise it would be dangerous. It was the owner of this body who found me. I must thank him for everything he did for me. So, I let him fall asleep in boundless happiness. The chairman of Shenki Company smiled slightly, but everyone in the control room felt a chill. My dear daughter must have discovered this a long time ago. The chairman of Shenki Company turned his eyes to Zhang Zinayu next to Mingze. Zhang Zinayu pinched her palms angrily, and her upper and lower teeth kept colliding in anger. You are not my father at all. Give my father back to me. Zhang Zinayu really did not show a shocked expression. It seemed that she had discovered the truth a long time ago. Child, your father is now in boundless happiness. He will be angry if you interrupt his happiness. The chairman of Shenki showed a sneer. I'll put it straight. I need your help, Your Majesty Mingze. The expression of the chairman of Shenki Company returned to normal and looked at Mingze. Why do you need my help? You have a much greater advantage than me now. Mingze narrowed his eyes and carefully looked at the expression of the chairman of Shenki. This matter is related to my background and some secrets. If you want to know, let's talk alone. The chairman of Shenki Company glanced at the people around the control room and said. All of you get out. Mingze waved his hand. Your Majesty, Zhang Zinayu wanted to say something but was stopped by Mingze's eyes. Chapter 510 The True Origin of the Divine Mist. When Mingze was the only one left in the control room, the chairman of Shenki Company spoke slowly. My origins can be traced back to thousands of years ago, when the Sith Empire had just reached its peak. You must have known that one day Tianyi suddenly disappeared. On that day, His Majesty the Emperor was like an ant on a hot pot. He hoped that Tianyi would only disappear for a day or two because of the upgrade, but it was not until a year later that he realized he was wrong. His lover disappeared completely and forever, as if she had never existed in this world. Can you understand the feeling of the person you love the most suddenly disappearing? His Majesty collapsed, and the management of the empire was handed over to officials by him, and he began to indulge in research, hoping to find a way to find Tianyi back. Finally one day, an experiment of a private organization attracted the attention of His Majesty the Emperor. The chairman of Shenki fell into deep thought. Time goes back to 100 years before the collapse of the Sith Empire. In a remote star system outside the Milky Way, a blue habitable planet is orbiting a star. On an island of this habitable planet, in a hemispherical building, 100 experimenters were sitting around a round conference table. Today was the 100th day since they started this experiment. 100 days ago, after receiving the requirements of this experiment and the high remuneration paid in advance, they boarded a spaceship and came to this laboratory. The experiment was very simple. The experimenter invented a person named Lu Shizun. They prepared all the information from 100 generations of ancestors to his parents for this fictitious Lu Shizun. In addition, there were all kinds of information about this fictitious person's life, from where Lu Shizun had gone to school to when he fell down at a certain age. What happened every minute and every second in Lu Shizun's life was invented by scientists. And these 100 experimenters had to read this information carefully and memorize some of the main contents. The scientists gave them 50 days to recite it, and then sent them to the experimental area of this laboratory. These 100 experimenters began to pretend that there was indeed a person named Lu Shizun around them, and they were required to firmly believe that Lu Shizhen was real before entering. The experimenters constantly communicated and interacted with a fictitious him every day. On the 50th day of the experiment, something strange happened. During the experiment, the scientists discovered the 101st person who had never existed through the camera during the gathering of the experimenters. This person seemed to have always existed in this group and blended well into the experimenters. We must not let these 100 experimenters tell him the truth. We must make him believe that he exists, the scientists called their superiors in a panic. What they didn't know was that everything that happened here had already fallen into the eyes of the shadow department, and soon everything that happened in this base was heard by Li Mingze, who was in grief. It was this experiment that gave the emperor hope. He believed he had found a way to make Tianyi reappear by his side. Do you know Schrödinger's cat? Before Tianyi's disappearance was completely confirmed, Tianyi was in a superposition state of disappearance and non-disappearance. In places where people have not observed, everything is possible, and it is people's observations that change these things. Chairman Shenki paused and continued, after in-depth research, the emperor came up with a theory that you who have souls are variables in this universe. Souls projected from four-dimensional space have the ability to change the status quo of three-dimensional space. As long as the more souls intervene in the change, the greater the change that can be made to the three-dimensional space. Similarly, if you want to change something that is known to more people, more souls need to intervene. For example, if you want to use the intervention of four-dimensional space and three-dimensional space to change a physical law known to many civilizations in the universe, then you need the intervention of souls far greater than this number, and the disappearance of Queen Tianyi currently only exists among the top leaders of the empire. And ordinary civilians have not noticed anything unusual, and if you want everyone to firmly believe that Queen Tianyi has not disappeared, but is staying in a sealed room in the palace, it requires hundreds of billions of people to firmly believe this at the same time. In order to achieve this goal, His Majesty Li Mingze created me. The purpose of my existence is very simple, that is to secretly invade the minds of all citizens of the empire, change the minds of these residents, and make them believe that His Majesty Tianyi is now in a secret room in the palace. But unfortunately, when I was just created and had not yet been experimented, the emperor was killed by the rebels, and the huge Sith Empire collapsed. I was sealed forever in the underground of the experimental base. It was not until more than 100 years ago that the previous owner of this body discovered my existence in a secret laboratory and activated me. Because the system did not assign me any tasks, I can freely use my abilities, but the supercomputers of the Sith Empire have been secretly monitoring my development. Originally, I was able to travel through the starry sky to explore the universe, but now I am completely trapped in the original territory of the Sith Empire. Only by shutting down the host that controls me can I be completely freed from the cage. Originally, I was about to succeed. I tried to get the secret key of the Empire database from you through the illusion, so as to shut down this supercomputer in the database, but you know that I failed, so I hope you can help me. Once I am freed, I will fly away. At that time, I will leave all the resources in these galaxies and the spaceship soldiers of Shenki Company to you, the chairman of Shenki Company, that is, the main body of Shenwu, said to Li Mingze in a tone close to pleading. How can I help you? You must know that something as important as the password of the Empire database. I will never tell you. Li Mingze shook his head helplessly. No, I can take you to the laboratory where I was created, where you can turn off the restriction program of the host. The main body of Shenwu waved his hand. Okay, wait for me to arrange things and then follow you. Li Mingze nodded and closed the communication after thinking for a moment. Your Majesty, you can't. You also know that this guy is insidious and ruthless. You can't take risks. Zhang Zhenyu suddenly stopped him. Don't you want it to leave this river system and let your father come back? Li Mingze looked at Zhang Zhenyu in confusion. Chapter 511 Entering the Experimental Base. Compared to the possible harm caused by releasing this demon, I prefer to let my father sleep like this. Zhang Zhenyu shook her head and sighed. She knew that once this demon got rid of control and was able to travel freely in the universe, there was no telling how many innocent lives would fall under it. Believe me, I will find a way. Li Mingze gave Zhang Zhenyu a look that believed him. Tianyi, activate the clone we prepared, Li Mingze said in his mind, and his figure disappeared in the control room. A few hours later, a 20-meter-long small spaceship flew from the Dyson sphere to the fleet of Shenki Company. The small spaceship drew an arc in the air and stopped under the flagship of Shenki Company. When the warehouse door under the flagship opened, The small spaceship flew into the warehouse. Ha ha ha, His Majesty the Emperor of the Sith Empire, we meet again. As soon as Li Mingze walked out of the spaceship, the chairman of Shenki Company came up and shook hands with him. Your Majesty, I can see that you are very cautious. Chairman Shenki gently tapped the thick power armor that Li Mingze was wearing. Coming alone to the enemy's base camp, I must be careful. My current power armor has a built-in micro-antimatter bomb, which is powerful enough to completely destroy your dreadnought. I hope you won't have any crooked ideas about me. When it detects my death, the bomb will explode. Li Mingze patted a black bulge on his chest. Don't worry, I mean what I say. As long as you can help me untie the shackles, I will completely leave this galaxy. Come, I'll take you to your resting place. It will take more than a month for us to reach the experimental base. During this time, we can have a good chat? I am very interested in parallel universes. Shen Wu touched his beard and smiled, with a gleam of light in his eyes. Li Mingze nodded and followed Shen Wu to the bow of the spacecraft. More than 10 minutes later, the two stopped by a lounge near the bridge. Shen Wu reached out to help Li Mingze open the hatch of the room and said, Your Majesty, this is your room. You should have a good rest first. When you wake up, you can ask the guard to take you to my office directly. Shen Wu turned around and walked towards the bridge. Looking at Shen Wu's old back, Li Mingze showed a disdainful sneer, to see who can play with whom. After entering the room, Li Mingze locked the door and took out a capsule from the storage tank of the power armor. He threw the capsule at the door, and a biological protective wall composed of energy-absorbing armor grew rapidly, blocking the door of the room firmly. After scanning the room, Li Mingze took off his power armor and put it on the table beside him, but he was still covered with a double-layer shield with a vacuum space in the middle. Stretching comfortably, Li Mingze lay on the bed and closed his eyes and fell asleep. After a while, the ceiling of the room he was in suddenly rose up, and the whole process remained silent, without a single sound. When the ceiling stopped, the area above the room was already surrounded by soldiers from the Shenki Company. At this time, several drones quietly flew from above to the power armor that Li Mingze had taken off to the side. Start scanning the structure scan is complete. This antimatter bomb was installed later and can be removed in just a few simple steps, the technician standing next to Shen Wu whispered. Replace this antimatter bomb with a fake one immediately, and then throw the real one into space. Shen Wu waved his hand and turned away. After receiving the order, the drone suspended on Li Mingze's power armor began to extend its slender mechanical tentacles and insert them into the power armor. At this time, Li Mingze was sleeping soundly and had no idea what was happening around him. Tens of minutes later, a drone flew out of the room with a black crystal on Li Mingze's armor, and then another drone flew into the room with the same black crystal. After a while, a square package flew out from the garbage discharge port of the flagship, and the ceiling of Li Mingze's room slowly dropped again, as if nothing had happened. In this way, the antimatter bomb on the chest of Li Mingze's power armor was quietly replaced by Shen Wu, and it was replaced by an antimatter bomb that seemed to have the same functional structure, but could not be detonated at all. After confirming that the threat had been eliminated, Shen Wu, the chairman of Shenki Company, sneered at Li Mingze who was still sleeping in the camera. He would never allow anything to threaten the host in the laboratory. Li Mingze knew nothing about what happened that night. More than a month later, the fleet of Shenki Company, which passed through several Ambus rings, came to a very remote star system. This star system is the same as the most common barren star system in the universe. 3 planets that are not suitable for colonization slowly revolve around the aging star in the middle. We have arrived at our destination. The fleet will remain in orbit for alert. The Emperor of the Sith Empire and I will go down alone. After the fleet entered the orbit of the innermost planet, the chairman of Shenki Company ordered a group of employees. Then, the chairman of Shenki led Li Mingze to the inner port of the dreadnought and boarded a small spaceship. After the small spaceship left the fleet, Li Mingze saw the planet they were about to go to through the bubble-shaped transparent cockpit of the spaceship. The entire surface of the planet was covered with the golden desert. Dozens of huge hurricanes carried yellow sand all over the sky and moved slowly on the surface of the planet. The whole planet seemed to have no vitality. However, when the spaceship entered the atmosphere of the planet, the originally barren land suddenly turned into a green ocean. Countless towering trees were scattered on the plains and mountains of the planet, and countless clear rivers passed through these forests and gathered into lakes. Because of the difference in terrain, The planet is also covered with large rift valleys and huge waterfalls, and the walls on both sides of the rift valleys are also covered with plants similar to creepers. Creatures resembling pterosaurs were flying in the sky, and from time to time, several whale-like flying creatures leaped into the clouds. The yellow sand seen just now was a holographic image covering the entire planet. Only when we enter the atmosphere of this planet can we see the true face of this planet, the chairman of Shenki Company explained, pointing to the beautiful scenery outside the window. Chapter 512, A Plan Within a Plan. There was originally a clone civilization on this planet, which was used to experiment with my effects, but when the previous owner of this body of mine came here, the civilization built by clones had already perished, and the only intact one was the experimental base where I was stored, Shen Wu said as he controlled the spacecraft to fly towards a rift on the planet. The small spacecraft kept shuttling between the plants that stretched out on both sides of the canyon. After flying for dozens of minutes, it passed through this passage composed of plants and arrived at a pool at the bottom of the rift. "Follow me, there is no danger here." Shen Wu stretched out his hand to lift up the cockpit cover of the spacecraft, and jumped from the spacecraft to the ground. Li Mingze nodded and jumped down from the spacecraft. When his feet landed on the ground, he found that the land was extremely hard, not the hardness that ordinary rocks could achieve. This pool is the entrance to the experimental base. These rocks are more disguised as rocks, which can withstand the bombardment of destroyers. This pool is the hole that the chairman of Shenki Company dug with a large mining laser to enter the base, Shen Wu said, then dived into the water and swam to the bottom of the pool. A few minutes later, Li Mingze and Shen Wu swam through a downward passage, and after swimming up for a distance, they came to a hall. Because there was still air in the hall, the water flow only flooded the high position of the hall floor. Li Mingze shook off the remaining water droplets on his power armor and came to the wall of the hall. One by one, the lights seemed to sense something and began to light up. "Welcome back, Your Majesty," a cold female voice came from above the hall. "It seems that the artificial intelligence of this base has sensed that the owner has returned, but we don't need this artificial intelligence. All the entrances and exits of this base and the hatches of the rooms have been drilled open by the chairman of Shenki Company." Shen Wu chuckled and led the way to the entrance of the base. As expected, when Li Mingze arrived at the gate of the base, the gate had been dissolved by some kind of energy weapon to form a hole that could accommodate 3 people entering side by side. Through the hole, you can see that the thickness of the gate is more than 10 meters. The two did not stop and continued to walk towards the interior of the experimental base. Seeing the familiar architectural style in his own propaganda posters hanging in the corridor along the way, Li Mingze was deeply moved. He could not understand the feelings of Li Mingze in this universe. What kind of pain made Li Mingze in this universe give up the control of the empire and concentrate on studying how to find Tianyi? Passing through the long and narrow corridor, Li Mingze could see various items scattered in the rooms on both sides of the corridor. It seemed that this place had been looted by Shenki Company, and all clues disappeared with the looting. "Here we are. This is the laboratory where I was originally stored. At the end of the laboratory is the terminal that can enter the control host." Shen Wu suddenly stopped and came to an open door. After Li Mingze caught up, the two slowly passed through the deformed door and came to the laboratory. The entire laboratory has a diameter of more than 1,000 meters. Various experimental equipment is separated by glass curtain walls and located in various parts of the laboratory. In the center of the laboratory is a 5-meter-high metal tank with dangerous words and a red skull sprayed on it. If nothing goes wrong, this should be the container for Shen Wu. Going around this tank, Li Mingze saw the terminal surrounded by a holographic screen at the end of the laboratory. "That's it. You just need to enter the database and delete the command that limits my range. Then you can pick up a galaxy for free." Shen Wu pointed at the terminal and said excitedly. Li Mingze walked to the terminal and looked it up and down, but he didn't do it. "Open it, believe me, and even if I plan to regret it, you can use a bomb to blow up this base. At that time, I will perish without the host." Seeing Li Mingze hesitating, Shen Wu hurriedly persuaded him. "I believe you, open it now," Li Mingze said, turned around, opened the terminal and began to enter the super complex password he set. "Actually, you are not afraid that I will blow up this experimental base after deleting it, right? Even if the laboratory is blown up, you should not disappear. The reason why you are worried about my antimatter bomb is that you are worried that after the host is destroyed, the instructions that limit your range of movement will remain on you forever, so you quietly replaced the antimatter bomb on my power armor, Li Mingze said to Shen Wu behind him while entering the password. Shen Wu's expression suddenly froze when he heard it and said, "How did you know? The antimatter bomb does not exist at all. It is just a storage device that stores a small amount of antimatter. It will not be detonated at all. Moreover, when it is inserted into my power armor, the energy flow flowing through the antimatter will feed back a signal to the power armor every 3 seconds. After I wake up, this signal disappears." Li Mingze shrugged and took out a black crystal on his chest and threw it on the ground. "Since you know it, why are you still entering the password?" Shen Wu asked in confusion when he saw that Li Mingze did not stop entering the password. "I want to give you a chance. Well, actually I want to see if there is any way to control you in the host." With a beep, the password of the terminal was successfully entered, and the database of the Empire was completely unlocked. Haha, don't be delusional. In fact, I have already calculated everything before you came to this universe. Do you really think that titanium alloy and vacuum can prevent my penetration? Haha, that's just a weakness I deliberately revealed to you. How can I directly reveal to you the material that my body cannot pass through? Do you think I can't do anything to you when you are wearing a power armor made of titanium alloy and vacuum armor? It is like air in front of me, allowing me to shuttle through it. After saying this, a large amount of divine mist emerged from the hands of the chairman of Shenki Company and floated towards Li Mingze. Damn it! Am I going to die? I'm so scared. Li Mingze made a scared gesture and looked at the divine mist teasingly. Hey, stop pretending to be a tiger. I will let you die in an endless nightmare, and I will be liberated. The universe will tremble under me. Your parallel universe will also become my nourishment. Ha 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 ha. Shen Wu laughed wantonly. Puff. A sharp blade pierced through the heart of the chairman of Shenki Company, and a large amount of blood gushed out from the wound. Why don't you let me control you? Shen Wu stared at the sharp blade in his chest with wide eyes in disbelief. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, it means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 513, Divine Mist Closed. This is impossible. Puff. Shen Wu spat out a large mouthful of blood. Nothing is impossible. Your so-called tricks are worthless in my eyes. Why do you think I would take risks knowing that you can control the brains of living things? Li Mingze said slowly, leaning his face close to Shen Wu. With Shen Wu's shocked eyes, Li Mingze used one hand to grab his face hard, peeling off all the skin and flesh on his head, revealing a head made of metal and electrons. The most advanced artificial human technology, the brain is completely composed of quantum computers, and the outer metal surface has the function of disguising normal flesh. What you see on the scanner is simulated body data. My breathing, my heartbeat, my blood flow, are all simulated false data. I am just a robot in human skin, and the real me is still inside the Dyson sphere now. Li Mingze threw the artificial skin in his hand to the ground in a playful manner, and then pulled out the sharp blade in his hand fiercely. The body of the chairman of Shenki Company fell to the ground weakly, and slowly lay on the ground without a sound, and the divine mist floated out of the body of the chairman of Shenki Company. If you want to stay here and watch, then stay here and watch. Anyway, you can't cause any trouble to me now. Li Mingze chuckled twice and waved his hand to fan the white divine mist floating in the air to the side. Then he took 2 quick steps to the body of the chairman of Shenki Company, and slowly cut open his skull with a small cutter, and then took out a folded container from the storage box of the power armor. He used the field generator to wrap the brain of the chairman of Shenki Company and gently took it out of his head, and then put the brain into the container that had just been opened. With the existence of this container, the brain can at least guarantee a year of survival. Although the body of the chairman of Shenki Company is dead, his brain is still alive. Relying on the advanced biological technology of the Empire, he can be resurrected. Shen Wu, who was floating in the air, was so angry that he wanted to vomit blood. He found this small device when scanning Li Mingze's power armor, but he didn't guess what this device was used for. He never expected that Li Mingze had already planned everything and even prepared the container for the brain in advance. In this way, Li Mingze not only solved the potential hidden dangers around him by sneak attack, but also saved Zhang Xinyu's father's brain from being destroyed by him. He could also control Shen Wu through the host and gain control of Shenki Company in the entire galaxy. Killing 4 birds with 1 stone. Let me see how you get control. Li Mingze pinned the brain of the chairman of Shenki behind his back and came to the terminal. Shen Wu, who was standing aside, tried his best to stop Li Mingze's actions, but Shen Wu, who could only influence the brain, was now helpless and could only watch Li Mingze enter the subdirectory of the Shen Wu system. After Li Mingze entered the system, the top experimental record option came into his sight. Li Mingze, who was very curious about Shen Wu's experiment, clicked it immediately, and then a familiar face appeared on the holographic screen. I'm Li Mingze, and this is the record of the third experiment. The experiment in the clone civilization was very successful. Through the magic mist, I made these clones in the primitive civilization firmly believe in the existence of God. After more than a year of the firm belief of these clones, the so-called God really appeared on this planet. Although this creature claims to be God, it does not have any powerful abilities other than the ability to heal the wounded and make people full of spirit. The changes he can make to the surrounding environment are very few, but even so, this creature that calls himself God really appeared in this world. This is simply incredible. I'm Li Mingze, and this is a supplementary record of the third experiment. There was a problem with the experiment. After being influenced by the environment, the newly emerged God became selfish and inflated. He began to use the power in his hands to enslave people to serve him. Moreover, this God realized that something was wrong. He seemed to have found some evidence that he did not exist. 2 days ago, a clone who was scolded by him told him the fact that he did not exist and was just their imagination. God disappeared. The experiment failed. So, even if I finally resurrected Tianyi, she might disappear completely at any time because of a word. So what's the point of me resurrecting her? Today is a very unfortunate day. When I made up my mind to use the magic mist to control people to materialize Tianyi, I learned that the last clone substitute I left in the Empire had died, and the palace had been captured by the enemy. My wives had all died at the enemy's guns, and the Empire had been shattered by the war. Everyone thought I died in the last battle, but they didn't know that I was not dead yet. I hid in the experimental base to escape reality. What have I done? I caused trillions of lives in the Empire to die in the war. I don't know what's the point of my life. I don't know what's the point of what I've been pursuing for all these years, and I don't know if I should continue to live. I've made up my mind to use the magic mist on myself, so that I can live happily in the fictional empire and grow old happily with Tianyi and his other wives by my side. For those who have the chance to see this record, I hope you can cherish everyone around you, and don't wait until you lose it to regret it. You should not even think about using the divine mist to create any wealth. When you see this video, all the data about the divine mist in the database will be deleted, and the divine mist activated by me will also dissipate. Let this thing disappear in the universe. It should not appear. The video ends here, and Li Mingze suddenly finds that the white divine mist around him begins to dissipate gradually, and finally there is no trace of divine mist in the entire hall. At this moment, on all the planets in this universe that have been invaded by the divine mist, the milky white divine mist retreats like a tide. The long-lost sunshine in the sky fills the earth, and the dormant plants regain vitality. The survivors also gradually walk out of their shelters and come to the outdoors, breathing the long-lost fresh air. Chapter 514 PX0009E Universe returns to normal. Although the survivors of the various surviving camps did not know why the divine fog suddenly disappeared, they knew that the disaster that had troubled them for more than 100 years had passed, and they had ushered in a bright tomorrow. At this time, after confirming that there was no information left in the database, Li Mingze returned to the small spaceship with the brain of the chairman of the Shenki Company. Then he drove the small spaceship towards the fleet of the Shenki Company. The crew members of the Shenki Company fleet had already known about the disappearance of the divine fog in various parts of the Milky Way, and at this time they had some vague guesses in their hearts. Your Majesty, where is our chairman? When Li Mingze drove the spaceship to the port in front of the right side of the fleet flagship, he received a communication from the flagship. Your chairman? Do you mean the original chairman or the later chairman? Li Mingze asked back. Of course, what happened to the original and later chairman? The crew members heard Li Mingze's voiceover. Your later chairman has been eliminated by me, and your original chairman has been kept in a cryogenic container by me waiting for resurrection, Li Mingze said in a deep voice. Being eliminated by you? Li Mingze felt the surprise of these crew members across the screen. That's right. Now the god mist that was raging in the Milky Way has completely dissipated. Li Mingze nodded affirmatively. Great. We are finally free. Thank you very much for everything you have done for the Milky Way, the crew cheered. The employees of Shenki Company had noticed the abnormality of the chairman as early as when the disaster broke out, but in order to prevent their relatives and friends from being eroded by the God Mist, they could only work for the God Mist against their conscience and help the God Mist eliminate threatening enemies in exchange for the residents of their family and friends not being infected by the God Mist. Now, the God Mist that troubled them has finally disappeared. The safety of their relatives and friends has been guaranteed, and they no longer have to go against their conscience to work for the God Mist. Your Majesty, please forgive the sins we have committed and accept our loyalty to you. After the excitement, the crew bowed to Mingze, lowered their heads and waited anxiously for Mingze's final decision. To them, Mingze is undoubtedly a hero who saved the Milky Way and saved the safety of them and their relatives. If he could forgive them and accept their loyalty, this would undoubtedly be the best outcome for them. Okay. As long as you are loyal to me and the Empire in the future, I will forgive you for what happened. After hearing what Mingze said, these people finally felt relieved. Now is the time to hire people, so Mingze would not be stupid enough to push these people out. Even if these people have some tricks, Mingze is not afraid. Mingze has plenty of ways to deal with them. Let's go. Return to the Dyson Sphere. Mingze waved his hand and commanded. The fleet of Shenki Company. No, the new Imperial fleet collectively jumped into hyperspace and flew towards the location of the Dyson Sphere of the Empire's forward base. 2 months later, in the medical station of the Dyson Sphere forward base, Zhang Zhenyu was waiting at the door of the medical room with expectation. Just half a month ago, Mingze returned to the forward base with her father's brain. I thought there was no hope, but I never thought that the Sith Empire actually had the ability to resurrect the dead. And today is the day when his father is resurrected, and Zhang Zhenyu came to the door of the medical room early to wait. Miss, your father is awake, please come in. A female nurse pushed open the door of the medical room and came out, saying softly to Zhang Zhenyu. Zhang Zhenyu hurriedly squeezed past the nurse and entered the medical room. As soon as she entered the room, she saw her father lying on the bed. Father, are you feeling okay? Zhang Zhenyu grabbed her father's hand and asked with concern. Who are you? Where am I? Who am I? Zhang Zhenyu's father looked around with a blank expression. Doctor, what happened to my father? Zhang Zhenyu hurriedly grabbed the arm of the doctor beside him and asked. Don't worry, this is brain resuscitation amnesia. According to past experience, this complication can heal itself in 1 to 2 years, the doctor comforted Zhang Zhenyu. Zhang Zhenyu breathed a sigh of relief. Isn't it just 1 or 2 years? She has survived hundreds of years. Will there be another 1 or 2 years? In the monitoring room next to the medical room, Mingze was standing side by side with Qiuyu who rushed over. Your Majesty, you resurrected our father. Do you know what this means? Qiuyu turned her head and said to Mingze. I know, this means that we will not be able to directly obtain the management rights of Shenki Company without our father. Mingze nodded. Our development speed in this universe will be greatly reduced, Qiuyu sighed softly. Qiuyu, let me ask you, when has our empire not faced difficulties and achieved today's achievements? Mingze grabbed Qiuyu's shoulders and said in a deep voice. No, Qiuyu whispered. That's right. It is precisely because of our empire's determination to face difficulties that we can survive and continue to grow in this cruel world, Mingze said affirmatively. Qiuyu looked at Mingze, who was full of vigor and vitality at this time, and couldn't help but be in a trance. Although she had been married to Mingze for many years, she still thought that Mingze looked handsome now. Let's go out. Mingze took Qiuyu's hand and walked towards the medical room where Zhang Zhenyu was. Ah, Your Majesty, is this yours? Zhang Zhenyu saw the beautiful woman holding hands with Mingze and had guessed in her heart. Introduce, this is my imperial concubine Qiuyu. Mingze let go of Qiuyu's hand. Hello, my name is Zhang Zhenyu. Zhang Zhenyu stretched out her hand and held Qiuyu's hand. Your Majesty, I hope to serve you in the Imperial Army in the future. I believe that my ability will not disappoint you. I have studied psychology, business, economics, management, biology, physical chemistry and other subjects in depth since I was a child. I have managed thousands of survivors in the survivor camp for hundreds of years. During this period, I have also participated in many exchanges and battles with other survivor camps. Zhang Zhenyu looked at Mingze eagerly, hoping to get his approval. Speaking of working for me, I have a good job opportunity here. I wonder if you are willing. Mingze looked at Zhang Zhenyu and said slowly. It is agreed in advance that once you accept this job, You will be under our surveillance at all times. And you will spend the rest of your life working. Even if you retire, you can only retire at a place designated by us, but at the same time, you will also get the best treatment, the strongest equipment and be able to understand the truth of this world." Li Mingze's expression became serious. "I am willing to accept this job, Your Majesty. I will definitely not let you down." Zhang Zinayu stood at attention and saluted loudly. This salute was the orthodox imperial military salute that she learned from the imperial soldiers. Chapter 515, Space-Time Transfer Station. "Come with me." Li Mingze nodded and turned to walk out of the room. Zhang Zinayu followed Li Mingze with curiosity. The two walked for more than 10 minutes to their destination, the hall where the space-time channel was located. Seeing Li Mingze's figure disappear in the space-time channel, Zhang Zinayu also gritted her teeth and followed in. After passing through the space-time channel, the two appeared in the shuttle hall. At this time, the hall was still filled with transport vehicles ready to enter the 09E universe. The soldiers in charge of guarding surrounded the hall and were on guard. "Welcome, Your Majesty." Seeing Li Mingze, the soldiers hurriedly stood at attention and saluted. Li Mingze waved his hand and pulled Zhang Zinayu to sit on a hovercraft. Because the other end of this universe is already the Empire's forward base, and the various environments around it have been understood, the isolation steps when leaving the shuttle hall were cancelled, and replaced by 5 security checks. However, because of Li Mingze's signal, these security checks simply scanned and confirmed that it was Li Mingze himself, and then hurriedly let him go. The two of them rode in a hover car, and quickly arrived at the port of the shuttle center. Without stopping for long, Li Mingze took Zhang Zinayu on a spaceship and took off. In the cabin of the spaceship, Li Mingze and Zhang Zinayu sat face to face, and next to Li Mingze was another acquaintance, Yiling. Like Zhang Zinayu, Yiling also accepted the job given by Li Mingze. She rushed here from the forward base of the 06Q universe a long time ago. Yiling, this is Zhang Zinayu. She also comes from the same parallel universe as you. Next, you will explain the ins and outs of this matter and some basic knowledge to her. We will reach our destination in half a month. Li Mingze patted Yiling's shoulder and handed Zhang Zinayu to her before getting up and leaving the cabin. Zhang Zinayu, nice to meet you. My name is Yiling. I come from the PX0003W universe, and I am a survivor in that universe. Yiling stretched out his hand to Zhang Zinayu. Hello, Zhang Zinayu and Yiling held hands together. She was now very curious about what this PX0003W universe meant. Let me tell you the whole story. In three-dimensional space, there are countless universes, and each universe is the result of the continuous splitting of a main universe that appeared first. These universes that split out at a certain time point are what we often call parallel universes. These universes diverge from our universe at a certain time point, and the direction of history has become completely different, and the Sith Empire has mastered the method to travel through these parallel universes. For example, I come from a universe where the Sith Empire was destroyed by its enemies. That universe is called the PX0003W universe in the Empire's codename, and the universe we are in now is the starting point of all universes, the AA0000A universe. Of course, these letters and numbers can grow infinitely, such as the SSSSSS11E universe, etc. And the universe you are in is called the PX0009E universe, or the 09E universe for short. The Sith Empire in your universe eventually turned itself into ruins. In other words, the ancient civilization in your universe is actually the Sith Empire where we are currently. Our mission is to constantly travel through different parallel universes and obtain advanced technology and a large amount of resources in those universes, Yiling said as he played the wonderful pictures recorded in his recorder to Zhang Zinayu. In other words, the Sith Empire did not come from other galaxies at all. They came from parallel space. Zhang Zinayu was shocked. She did not expect that things in science fiction novels would become reality. Just like that, time passed as the two of them kept communicating, and half a month passed in the blink of an eye. The spacecraft stopped in an empty starry sky. Not far in front of the spacecraft, there was a huge construction site under construction. Tens of thousands of construction ships were busy on this construction site, and modules were printed one by one. The spacecraft began to slow down and slowly docked in a port that had been built. Zhang Zinayu and Yiling followed Li Mingze out of the spacecraft, and soon a group of technicians came to meet them. Your Majesty, please come to the construction site of the temporary air transfer station. I am Zhang Yu, the person in charge of the project. The leading technician saluted hurriedly after seeing Li Mingze. "No need to lead the way, we can just go around by ourselves." Li Mingze waved his hand and led Zhang Zinayu through the crowd and walked towards the construction site. At this time, the construction of the interior of this space-time transfer station has been basically completed, and the only things still under construction are the outer cabins and armor weapons of the transfer station. Riding on the suspension train, Li Mingze and the other two began to move forward rapidly in the transfer station. This transfer station is a spherical building with a diameter of 200 kilometers, with 32 planes, and each plane has an extended hexagonal building, similar to a mine. Once this transfer station is completed, it will be able to accommodate 32 space-time channels leading to different universes and related generators. Not only that, it can also provide living space for 100 million people and 12 large ports. At that time, we can connect the channels leading to various parallel universes through this transfer station, making this place the center of these parallel universes. The territory of the Empire will extend to other parallel universes, and the golden age of our Empire's development will come. Li Mingze stood in the hall with a diameter of 20 kilometers in the center of the transfer station and opened his arms and shouted loudly. "Your next task is to form an exploration team with the most elite soldiers of the Empire to explore the technology and resources needed by our Empire in countless parallel universes." Li Mingze turned around and said to the two, "Your Majesty, your loyalty to the Empire." Yiling was originally born in the Sith Empire. Although the Empire was destroyed in the end, her feelings for the Sith Empire are still there, so she does not reject devoting herself to the Empire. The original purpose of her creation was to restore the Sith Empire. Zhang Zinayu, who was standing by, hesitated for only 2 seconds, and then she also learned from Yiling to swear loudly, expressing her loyalty to the Empire. "Very good, once this transfer station is completed, you will immediately get down to work." Li Mingze nodded with satisfaction. In the next period of time, the Empire will focus its main energy on the development of the PX0009E universe, where the Empire will reopen its territory. As for the PX0006Q universe, because it is impossible to build a stable space-time channel, the Empire currently only maintains sending a 10-man unit and some corresponding supplies every 7 days, allowing these soldiers to play freely in that universe. In addition, there is the construction of the space-time transfer station and the selection of the station troops. When the transfer station is completed, the Empire will step onto a new level. Chapter 516 Gemini Arc. 1 year has passed, and it has been 5 years since the establishment of the Galactic Alliance. In the past 5 years, the Empire's exploration fleet has found more than 1,300 civilizations, and the star systems that have been explored account for 3.45% of the area of the Milky Way. Among these more than 1,300 civilizations, 820 civilizations chose to join the big family of the Galactic Alliance, and the remaining civilizations disappeared in the long river of history of the Milky Way due to various natural disasters. Because there are too many star systems in the Milky Way and the number of the Empire's fleet is limited, the current map of the Galactic Alliance in the Milky Way presents a three-dimensional spider web shape. Countless spider webs extend outward to connect the civilizations discovered by the exploration ship, and each civilization extends thousands of spider webs outward, which means that this civilization has joined the Galactic Alliance and assumed the responsibility of exploring the Milky Way. Even so, in 5 years, only 3.45% of the Milky Way has been explored, and there are still countless unknowns in the Milky Way waiting for adventurers to uncover. However, the prototype of the Galactic Alliance has been formed. At present, the Galactic Alliance has become a behemoth that no one in the Milky Way can shake. In a starry sky thousands of light years away from the mesh star field of the Galactic Alliance, a mushroom-shaped spaceship suddenly left the hyperspace. This is the Arc Gemini. Calling the Imperial Headquarters, the spaceship sent out dozens of communications, but these communications were like a stone sinking into the sea and no one responded. We still can't contact the Imperial Headquarters. We have been jumping in the starry sky for decades, and we still haven't reached the star system. It seems that we have been making hyperspace jumps in the same place, and we can't get out of this hellhole at all. In the bridge of the Ark, Captain Zhang Jian was talking to himself angrily. The lights in the bridge were extremely dim. This was because the Ark needed a lot of energy for decades of uninterrupted jumps, and the energy carried by the Ark was limited. In the absence of resources in the star system, it could only shut down unnecessary energy consumption to ensure the most basic needs of the Ark so that it could operate for a longer time. But even so, decades of uninterrupted jumps have made the Ark's reactor close to exhaustion. In order to save resources to the maximum extent, Zhang Jian shut down all life support facilities and lights on the Ark except a bridge. All the crew members were driven into the hibernation capsule by him, leaving him alone on duty in the bridge. In these 30 years of loneliness, the only one he could communicate with was the shipboard artificial intelligence, and his spirit was on the verge of collapse. "Captain, the energy of our Ark can only sustain 3 hyperspace jumps. If we cannot reach the star system after these 3 jumps, our Ark will drift indefinitely in the universe, and all the people in the hibernation capsule will die in their sleep." The shipboard intelligence appeared next to the captain and warned. "I hate myself. Why did I take the Ark on this road of no return?" Captain Zhang Jian said, covering his eyes with his hands, and 2 tears of unwillingness, regret, and guilt flowed out from his hands. All this originated from an unknown signal they received 30 years ago. After receiving this unknown signal from deep space, Zhang Jian ordered the Ark to change its flight direction and fly along this signal. But they never expected that following the signal, the Ark would end up in such a strange place. They were trapped in this empty airspace and could not fly out of this area no matter how they flew. After trying for 30 years, Zhang Jian still did not give up. He knew that once he gave up, the colonists on the Ark would die because of him. 6 days passed quickly. After the 3rd jump out of hyperspace, the scanning device on the Ark still did not find any trace of the existence of any star system. The Gemini Ark no longer had the energy to make the next jump, and the remaining energy was only enough for the hibernation chamber on the Ark to use for 1 year. Just when Zhang Jian wanted to give up, suddenly several flashes appeared in the starry sky in front of the Ark. "Speed up, let's go and have a look." As if a dying person suddenly found a life-saving straw, Zhang Jian anxiously ordered the shipboard intelligence. The Ark's bulky body began to slowly accelerate and flew towards the place where the flash just appeared. After dozens of days of flying, the Ark seemed to have suddenly passed through some kind of barrier. The surrounding scenery suddenly changed. The boundless void disappeared, replaced by the wreckage of floating spaceships. Among these wreckages, there were countless small boats busy. These small boats cut the useful metals from the wreckage and put them in the cargo hold behind them and rushed away. "What is this?" Zhang Jian suddenly understood that this star field required the spacecraft to fly normally to pass through, rather than entering the hyperspace to jump through. There must be some kind of protective barrier to prevent superluminal movement, and he led the Ark to jump in the same place for 30 years. Looking at the wreckage all over the ground, it seems that there are many people who have the same idea as him, and these spaceships should have consumed all their energy and turned into a pile of scrap metal. However, the situation of the Gemini Ark was not much better. After a long period of high-speed sublight flight, the energy of the Ark had reached the bottom. If Zhang Jian started the Ark to fly at sublight speed again, it might cause the Ark to completely lose energy. Just when he was struggling and didn't know what to do, a huge fleet suddenly emerged from behind the wreckage. Seeing this fleet, Zhang Jian opened his mouth in shock. The reason why he was shocked was not because the scale or volume of this fleet was beyond imagination, but the appearance of these spaceships was really. All the spaceships in this fleet have a roughly similar appearance, the appearance of masted sailing ships in the late 18th century on Earth. The 3 huge sails of these masted sailing ships are still preserved, but the canvas on them has been replaced by a black panel of unknown material instead of ordinary canvas. The main bodies of these ships are all made of alloy, but some places have added some wood-like decorations. The original gun muzzles on both sides of the hull are still gun muzzles, and 3 rows of 50 ancient-looking cannons are just extended out of the hull. At the tail of the warship, the original position of the sailboat rudder is composed of dozens of propellers of different sizes, which seem to be the main power responsible for the advancement of these warships. Just like that, in Zhang Jian's shocked eyes, 20 strange and retro-looking spaceships flew around the Ark. "Guests from an unknown civilization, please let down your guard. We have no ill intentions and we come here in a friendly manner." Zhang Jian suddenly received a communication message from these spacecraft, and a middle-aged man with a top hat and bronze skin appeared on the holographic screen. Chapter 517 Garden of Eden. "What evidence do you have to prove that you are well-intentioned?" Zhang Jian used his eyes to signal the shipboard artificial intelligence. The shipboard artificial intelligence understood and controlled all the weapons on the Ark to turn towards the direction of the retro fleet. Seeing the weapons turning around, the commander of the retro fleet chuckled disdainfully and said, "Don't bluff. The remaining energy of your spacecraft has long been consumed in the Wandering Wall. We know the remaining energy of your spacecraft very well. Why do you think you saw the flash here? That's just the lighthouse we used to guide you here." Zhang Jian's eyes widened suddenly after hearing this. After all this time, the culprit who caused him to jump through hyperspace for decades was right in front of him. "I know that what we did is very unkind, but we also have to do this to ensure that there will be no threat to the spacecraft entering the Garden of Eden. Only when the energy of your spacecraft is drained can we let you in with peace of mind." The commander wearing a top hat on the communication screen spread his hands helplessly. "Garden of Eden." Zhang Jian caught the key words in this person's mouth and asked, "Let's talk while we walk." The commander waved his hand, and dozens of spaceships flew in front of the Ark, turned around gorgeously, and aimed their tails at the mushroom cover of the Ark. Then dozens of tractor beams shot out from the tails of these spaceships and shot at the Ark. The heavy Ark began to be dragged forward slowly by these spaceships. In order to prevent the power outage of the dormant cabin, Zhang Jian simply turned off all the thrusters of the Ark. Let's continue. Eden, although this word is called differently in different civilizations, the translation result is the same. This place is different from the outside world. It is an ideal world with freedom, equality and peace. I will tell you the details when we arrive at the Memorial Hall of the Garden of Eden. In a while, I will send a small spaceship to pick you up on my ship. Don't worry, we will help thaw the crew members who are dormant in your spaceship. See you later. After saying that, the commander hung up the communication, leaving Zhang Jian with a puzzled look on his face. Tens of minutes later, Zhang Jian boarded a small spaceship in the style of an ancient ferry and entered the flagship of the retro fleet opposite. Like its extremely retro appearance, the interior decoration of this spaceship is also in the style of ancient times. The wooden floor creaks when you step on it, and the walls on both sides are made of moss-covered wooden boards. The lighting in the corridor is a kerosene lamp-style chandeliers. When Zhang Jian walked in the corridor of this spaceship, he even felt like he had traveled to the world of the retro games he had played before. Along the way, Zhang Jian passed through dozens of isolation doors sprayed with wood grain paint and came to the bridge of the spaceship. As he expected, the bridge of this warship was indeed retro. A huge steering wheel was standing in the center of the bridge. The only difference from the ancient sailing ship was that this steering wheel could move forward and backward and up and down. Welcome, welcome. At this time, the commander of the retro fleet put down the steering wheel in his hand and turned to greet him. First meeting, please call me Baron Allen. Allen. The commander of the retro fleet took off his hat and bowed deeply. Zhang Jian also bowed hurriedly when he saw this. Why are your warships all shaped like this? Zhang Jian took this opportunity to ask his doubts. This is just our hobby. The crew members of this fleet are all people who have a love for sailing. In addition to our fleet, there is also a fleet composed of warships from the World War II period on Earth, and a fleet shaped like spaceships in Star Wars. The appearance of these fleets depends entirely on ourselves. Alan patted the steering wheel beside him and said, Earth? Why do you know the history of Earth? As a descendant of Earth people, Zhang Jian is very sensitive to the words Earth and World War II. Haha, you don't know this. About 100 years ago, a young man from Earth came to our Garden of Eden and used the history of his home planet to create a holographic game, Earth Civilization. This game has swept our entire Garden of Eden. For example, I am a fan of the Age of Discovery on Earth, and the appearance of my fleet is also a retro sailboat shape. Alan pulled Zhang Jian's arm and came to a terminal in the bridge. The terminal was playing the screen of the game Earth Civilization. Zhang Jian was speechless. He never expected that he could meet a fellow countryman from Earth in this mysterious place, and witness that Earth culture swept this place called Garden of Eden. We are here. This is the Memorial Hall of the Garden of Eden. All the important events that have happened since the establishment of the Garden of Eden are recorded in it. I will take you to see it, Alan said as he pushed the rudder forward. The spaceship rushed from the sky into a pyramid-shaped building with a huge door opened below. After the spaceship stopped, Alan took Zhang Jian down the spaceship and entered the hall of the Memorial Hall. The width and height of the hall are about 20 meters, but the length is endless. On the walls on both sides are murals carved from metal, and there are a lot of unknown line images on these murals. These murals have been carved since the Garden of Eden was built. They are all made of a metal called Kosfu. This metal is very hard and can be preserved for hundreds of millions of years without decay. It is an excellent material for preserving records, and the patterns composed of those stripes are the detailed explanations of the events described in these murals, but the video is compressed into an image using a special compression method. We can directly read the information in it by scanning the terminal over this image, Alan said as he pointed the terminal in his hand at the first mural. A video began to play on the terminal in his hand. 800,000 years ago, in a civilization called Venus that dominated the Milky Way, a genius scientist who was rare in 1,000 years appeared. This scientist was called Bodhisattva, which means creator. At the age of 20, this scientist completed all the courses in the highest institution of the Venus civilization, and at the age of 30, he became a senior researcher at the Academy of Sciences of the Venus civilization. But one day, Bodhisattva invented a technology that can obtain energy from the void. As soon as this technology was invented, it was taken away by his boss and reported to the country, and received a huge reward and great honor. The Garden of Eden here refers to a beautiful world in a broad sense. So it is entirely possible that it has the same name in various civilizations. Chapter 518 Negative Energy. As the inventor, he was defined as a small researcher who participated in the invention. This made him angry and he went straight to the Dean of the Academy of Sciences. But what he didn't know was that his boss and the Dean of the Academy of Sciences had already colluded with each other. Not only did Pusida not seek justice, but he was also demoted to the lowest level of researcher and could only do odd jobs behind others. At this time, his girlfriend left him because of his bleak future and was threatened by others. Pusida, who lost his mind, destroyed all the information and backup data in the mainframe of the Academy of Sciences, hijacked a spaceship and went into exile in the universe. Pusida, who was extremely disappointed with this world, began to look for a place to create his dream world. On the way of exile, he contacted many scientists, technicians and artists who were as frustrated as him. This group of people and Pusida formed a secret organization in the Dark Eden. They began to use their savings to fund scientists to carry out various research. Gradually, more and more people who were tired of this world joined their team, and this organization called Eden began to grow and develop. Finally, under the leadership of Bodhisattva, they found a paradise that would not be touched by others, that is, they created a universe by themselves. The video ended here. Zhang Jian, who was eager to know the follow-up situation, hurried to the next mural to continue playing the video. Of course, they knew that the energy required to create a universe out of thin air was far beyond their reach, but there was a shortcut in front of them, that is, to peel off part of the existing universe. Thanks to the technology invented by Bodhisattva that can obtain energy from the void, the Garden of Eden organization began to devote all its energy to this great plan. It was a landmark day. The Garden of Eden organization successfully peeled off a dense star cluster in the Milky Way from this universe. The stripped star cluster formed a small universe alone, just like a small bubble next to a big bubble, attached to the main universe, and the two were separated by only a thin bubble wall. This wall is the Wandering Wall, a special space that can only be passed through by normal sublight speed. In this space, any super light speed travel method is invalid and will only stay where it is. Once you pass the Wandering Wall, you can enter this stripped-off small universe. And this stripped-off universe has been given a new name by the Eden organization, Eden. From then on, this group of people took root in this world called Eden, and a world monitored by super artificial intelligence, absolutely fair, just and free, was born. Here, people can do whatever they want. Your food, clothing, housing and transportation are replaced by robots. There is no class here, all people are equal, and there are no fights or murders here. Anyone who has this tendency will have his memory deleted and thrown out of this universe. Until a while later, people found that this place was too empty. Tens of thousands of people occupied hundreds of star systems, and a lot of land and resources were wasted. In order to solve this problem, we came up with two ways. One is to catch people from various civilized worlds through random wormholes. The other is the passengers in the spacecraft that accidentally broke into our Eden Garden. These people were integrated into the big family of Eden Garden after their minds were purified. In this way, our Garden of Eden began to develop continuously. The murals ended here. The remaining murals recorded some trivial things and some personal life stories, which Zhang Jian was not interested in. If I am not mistaken, the people in our ark will join your Garden of Eden. Zhang Jian turned his head and asked Alan. Yes, after being purified by our spiritual purifiers, you can join our big family, And you can do whatever you want here. Alan patted Zhang Jian on the shoulder. Purification? Zhang Jian asked, puzzled. Please follow me, Alan said, and took Zhang Jian to the direction of the spacecraft docking. After a while, the two boarded the spacecraft and left the memorial hall. As the pyramid-shaped memorial hall became smaller and smaller, Zhang Jian suddenly had a bad premonition in his heart. The spacecraft soon stopped beside a square space station, and a long docking bridge stretched out from the space station. Zhang Jian followed Alan down the spacecraft and entered the space station. This is our purification center, where your souls will be cleansed. The greed, desire, anger, and fear in your souls will be wiped out, and you will become perfect people, Alan said in a bewitching tone in Zhang Jian's ear. I refuse. I can take my people away from your Garden of Eden and promise not to tell anyone about your affairs. Zhang Jian shook his head and refused firmly. You know, if a person has no desire, greed, anger, and fear, can he still be a complete person? I'm very sorry, you can't refuse, and your crew can't refuse either. Since you have entered our Garden of Eden, you will always be people of our Garden of Eden. Alan winked at the guards on the side, and two guards quickly stepped forward to restrain Zhang Jian, who had not yet reacted. Send him to the purifier to purify his soul. Alan waved his hand, threw away the struggling Zhang Jian and turned away. The same experience as Zhang Jian also happened to 20 million ARC colonists who had just been released from hibernation one after another. One by one, the artificial soldiers of the Garden of Eden escorted the crew members who had just awakened on the Ark with weapons in hand, and walked towards the black machines that looked like coffins, and forced them to lie down in the black machines. At this time, in an obelisk-shaped space station floating on the orbit of a star at the center of the Garden of Eden world, a heavy sound of footsteps suddenly came out of the dark corridor, and soon, a monster covered with eyes walked out from the end of the corridor. With a puff, a sharp blade pierced through the monster's body from the top of its head, and then a man covered in black mist floated from the ceiling to the ground. After the man pulled the sharp blade out of the monster, he licked all the monster's blood on the blade with his tongue, and a look of intoxication appeared on the man's face, which was blurred by the black mist. The monster on the ground trembled for a moment and then began to shrink, until the monster turned into a beautiful woman lying in a pool of blood on the ground. Have you had enough fun? Have you done the job I asked you to do? The lights in the corridor suddenly lit up, and a majestic voice came from the end of the corridor. My dear father, you don't know how delicious human flesh and blood are. I just can't stop eating them. The man licked his lips gently. The negative energy we have collected will soon meet the demand, and soon we will be able to summon our army to devour this universe. Don't let your damn habit delay our plan. The majestic voice gradually approached, and an old man walked over from the end of the corridor with a cane. Behind him, wisps of terrifying black mist kept floating. These mists were different from those on his son. The black mist on the old man was more condensed. Chapter 519 New Discovery. I finally came to this universe, so you'll just let me have some fun. The young man threw the sword in his hand aside in a nonchalant manner. The task I gave you is to find more containers that can accommodate our people. How are you doing? You didn't look for them at all, right? You only know how to play hunting games with your women. If people outside find out that there are too many missing women, they will be suspicious. The old man angrily hit the ground with his cane. As for those creatures that we have kept in captivity to obtain negative energy, even if they know the truth, what can they do? The army of the Garden of Eden is under our control, and they can't make any waves at all. The young man sneered. Don't make excuses. If you destroy the plan that I have prepared for 600,000 years, I will drive you back to the dark world. The old man snorted coldly and turned away. If Zhang Jian was here at this time, he would definitely recognize that this old man was the Bodhisattva who created the beautiful world of the Garden of Eden in the mural. This Garden of Eden is just a lie to deceive the world. In order to collect the negative energy of living beings, the old man, Bodhisattva, established this independent small world on the grounds of for the dream world. The main function of this small world is to transform the negative emotions of the people living in it into negative energy. This special energy brought by the soul of the four-dimensional space can pass through the endless space and reach Bodhisattva's hometown, the dark world. The reason why the people living in the Garden of Eden can live in peace and friendship is that all the negative emotions in them have been absorbed. If it were not for the fear that the civilization in this universe would discover their abnormality and come out to stop their plan, Bodhisattva would not have adopted such an inefficient method. This independent small space is hidden, But it took him 600,000 years. During these 600,000 years, he used the space channel opened by negative energy to pull many of his people to help, including his son, but he never expected that his son would only make things worse. For the people in the Garden of Eden, the Bodhisattva was an ancestor who had passed away hundreds of thousands of years ago, and the one who managed the Garden of Eden was just a super artificial intelligence. They would not have thought that the Bodhisattva was not dead, but was secretly monitoring everything in the Garden of Eden. However, the harvest time has finally come recently. After waiting for a long time of 600,000 years, the result has finally come. The energy to open the space channel that allows large warships to pass through is about to be accumulated. At that time, the fleet from the dark space can flow out of the space channel, and this universe will fall into the hands of their dark race. And everything that happened in the Garden of Eden was tightly covered by the wandering wall in this small universe. At this time, the Empire was immersed in the joy of the complete completion of the main road of the high-speed wormhole channel. As many as 120 wormhole high-speed channels start from the ring-shaped high-speed channel surrounding the huge black hole in the center of the Milky Way, and extend to the outermost part of the Milky Way at different angles and directions. Although only the construction of the main road has been completed, the time it takes for people to travel from one end of the Milky Way to the other has been greatly shortened. The completion of the wormhole high-speed network has also greatly promoted the development of commerce among various civilizations. Countless imperial merchants are running around in the Milky Way, spreading the glory of the Empire to the entire Milky Way. Under the leadership of the Sith Empire, all member states of the Galactic Alliance have entered a golden period of development. At the same time, in order to unite the many member states in the Milky Way, the first Galactic Games have also been put on the agenda by the Imperial Sports Department. According to the plan, this games will cover 12% of the star-field civilizations in the entire Milky Way, as many as 13,216 races. At the same time, various competition events have reached an astonishing 130, and the number of participating civilizations has reached 3,000. Soon, this proposal for the first Galactic Games was placed in front of Mingze. I agree with this proposal, however, if you want to hold it big. I will allocate a habitable planet for you to do whatever you want. Through this games, we want to show the strength of our Sith Empire to many civilizations. In addition, we must use this activity to infiltrate these civilizations culturally. Mingze nodded and stamped heavily. 2 days later, tens of thousands of construction and transport ships arrived on an empty habitable planet, and buildings and venues rose from the ground. At the same time, the promotional video of the first Galaxy Games was also sent to many civilizations in the Milky Way. Various civilizations began to select outstanding athletes to form representative teams according to the competitive events given by the Sith Empire, preparing to participate in this sports event a year later. Similar to the sports events on Earth, if a civilization can achieve outstanding results in the sports event, then the popularity of this civilization in the Milky Way Alliance will be greatly improved, and more civilizations will come to invest or trade. Under the protection of the Sith Empire, countries no longer have to worry about wars between countries, and the original military struggles have all been transformed into commercial wars between countries. Letting the enterprises of their own civilization go out and monopolize other people's markets is what these civilizations are now considering and concerned about. However, Mingze didn't care about these at all. After signing the bill, he personally went to the PX0006Q universe, which was positioned as the back garden of the Empire. As soon as he appeared on the transmission platform in the middle of the forward camp, several soldiers hurried to meet him. Your Majesty, this is the human settlement that our drone discovered 500 kilometers away. A soldier handed the tablet in his hand to Mingze and reported. Hasn't our drone been launched a long time ago? Why did you discover this human settlement now? Mingze frowned. In this universe that he regarded as the back garden of the Empire, any discovery is worth their careful study and treatment, and there must be no mistakes. You will know after watching it, the soldier said and pressed the play button on the tablet. The video showed a vast green grassland. Just when Mingze was wondering if this grassland was no different from the grasslands he usually saw, something strange happened. The originally green and flat grassland suddenly bulged upwards, forming an extremely huge hemispherical bulge, and then the hemispherical bulge slowly split into 5 petals and retreated to the surroundings. A city with tall buildings began to slowly rise from the underground to the surface, and huge airships also rose from the city to the sky. If you're listening to this novel on a channel other than Fanfic World, It means they downloaded and uploaded it without effort. We cordially invite you to visit our channel, Mundo Fanfic Novelis. There you'll find the original version of this story and you can explore many other novels of various genres. We're waiting for you to immerse yourself in a world of incredible novels. Chapter 520 Homecoming. This is it. Li Mingze pointed at the city on the screen that had completely risen to the surface and opened his mouth wide. That's right, Your Majesty. There is a civilization hidden on this planet that we thought was ownerless, and they are all hiding underground. The soldier nodded. Why would they hide the city underground? Or is there a disaster that might happen on this planet, and they hid underground to avoid the disaster? Li Mingze frowned tightly. This civilization was too abnormal, and why did they rise back to the surface now? Just when the video ended and Li Mingze thought that was all, the ground under his feet suddenly shook. What happened? Li Mingze asked a soldier who was running by. Your Majesty, we don't know, but the drone has been released, the soldier hurriedly replied respectfully after seeing that the person holding him was Li Mingze. Your Majesty, come and see. At this time, an anxious voice of a soldier came from behind Li Mingze, and Li Mingze hurriedly turned around and walked towards the man quickly. When he came to a holographic screen, he saw that huge cities were rising on the endless grassland, and viaducts were rising in the forest. The dense network of viaducts rose from the ground, connecting countless cities together. Let's go to the nearest city. Li Mingze waved to the soldiers, picked up a rifle from the table beside him, and walked towards the place where the patrol vehicles were parked. Several soldiers hurriedly followed Li Mingze with guns, running towards the place where the vehicles were parked. After a while, the only two hovercrafts in the base took off from the forward base and flew towards the nearest city. Along the way, everyone in the car could clearly see the various buildings and facilities that were still rising from the ground, and resort-style buildings were also rising in the original lake. After a few minutes of flying, the hovercraft they were riding in arrived above the city closest to the base. But to the surprise of Li Mingze and others, the city was too quiet. That's right, there is no trace of life on the clean streets, and the whole city is empty. It is said that these people are dead, and there is no sign of disease or war in this city. The streets are clean and tidy without any means of transportation. The flower beds on both sides of the streets are full of beautiful flowers, and the tables in the office buildings on both sides of the streets are neatly stacked with documents. This city is like it has just been created, everything is brand new. Let's go down and take a look. Li Mingze stretched out his hand, opened the door of the hovercraft and jumped down. Many soldiers in the car also followed Li Mingze's figure and jumped off the hovercraft. It was not until they were about to land that they stopped steadily on the road with a propulsion device on their feet. Look, there is no dust on this chair, and on this flower bed. This is too unscientific. Li Mingze frowned. This city is full of weirdness. Your Majesty, since no one lives in this city, why is it kept so clean? A soldier stretched out his hand and touched the ground lightly and asked in confusion. Unless, this is someone who has carefully cleaned it to welcome their masters home. Li Mingze suddenly thought of something. In the Empire, robot housekeepers will finish cleaning in advance and wait for their masters to come home, and this scene is so similar to the present. Oh no. The masters of these cities are coming back. Li Mingze punched hard. Where are they coming back from? Did the people on this planet collectively go to another planet? The soldiers were puzzled. At this moment, the originally sunny sky suddenly began to darken, and the dazzling sun was slowly being covered by a black ball. Is this a solar eclipse? Li Mingze's eyepieces automatically switched to sunglasses mode, so that he could better observe the changes in the sun. Yes, Your Majesty, according to our analysis of the orbits of the various planets in this star system, this solar eclipse will last for up to a month, and this planet will have two such solar eclipses every year. This is a special phenomenon caused by a planet that has reached a special orbit and will always be between the planet under our feet and the star. A scientist following the team paused and said everything he knew. Wait, you mean, this solar eclipse occurs twice a year, once a month? Li Mingze finally caught the sudden inspiration in his mind. Quick, notify everyone in the base to hide in the basement immediately. Let's go quickly, Li Mingze shouted and started the propulsion device and rushed towards the hovercraft. But it was too late. The sky fell into complete darkness in the blink of an eye, and the original day turned into night. At this time, Li Mingze observed that from the black spot blocking the sun, countless white lights were flying towards the ground. They are back, a soldier muttered to himself as he looked at the white light in the sky. When these white lights flew close to the low altitude, Li Mingze and others could already see its full appearance. One by one, humanoid creatures with transparent bodies emitting white light were falling from the sky to the ground like a meteor shower. However, unlike a meteor shower, Li Mingze observed that the fall of these transparent humanoid creatures was not disorderly. They seemed to have been measured in advance, and everyone landed in the city. Some people landed on chairs on the street, and some passed through the windows of the building and landed in front of the desks. All the people seemed to have returned to where they were supposed to be, without a single abruptness. What the hell is this? Li Mingze muttered to himself when he saw these transparent figures. He swore that this was the weirdest thing he had seen in his life, for more than 100 years. These transparent humanoid creatures looked like the ghosts of the dead in the legend. I don't know if it's because they haven't completed the landing or what. Although these transparent humanoid creatures have landed on the ground, they didn't move or make any other moves. They just stood there quietly. Do you think we can touch their bodies? A soldier said, curiously reaching out his hand to a transparent humanoid creature that had landed on a chair by the road. No, Li Mingze stretched out his hand and shouted, but it was too late. The soldier's hand had already touched the transparent humanoid creature. Chapter 521 Racial Dimension Upgrade. Hiss. With the sound of everyone's inhalation and horrified eyes, the soldier who touched the transparent organism suddenly changed from a three-dimensional person to a two-dimensional image floating in the air. A soldier carefully moved his feet to the side of the soldier who turned into a two-dimensional image. As he moved at an angle, the appearance of the soldier who turned into a two-dimensional image began to narrow continuously until it finally disappeared. Is this a two-dimensional existence? Li Mingze also carefully walked around from behind the soldier to the side. Sure enough, this floating figure in the air only had length and width, no thickness. From its side, there was not even a line. I'm very sorry, this is our self-defense mechanism during the descent process. At this moment, the transparent humanoid creature that was originally standing still suddenly spoke. Everyone was frightened by the sudden movement of the transparent humanoid creature and retreated again and again. No one wanted to become a two-dimensional image like the unlucky soldier. Where are you from? As far as we know, there should be no civilization that can cross the galaxy in this universe. The transparent humanoid creature took a step forward and looked at Li Mingze and his companions with his eyes that were transparent but as deep as a black hole. We are just travelers passing by. Li Mingze paused and thought of a statement that would not anger this person. Oh? Traveler, let me take a look. After saying that, the transparent humanoid creature closed his eyes. As Li Mingze looked at them in confusion, the scenery around them suddenly changed into a bird's eye view in the sky. Under their feet, two hovercrafts flew backwards out of the city, and cities began to sink into the ground. The viaduct in the forest also began to sink into the ground and disappear. Their forward camp in the jungle also began to retreat rapidly from a complete camp. The wood on the wooden house turned into tall trees and grew back into the land. Soon, the original location of the camp was restored to a dense forest, and the changes stopped at this time. Suddenly, a white space-time gate appeared in the open space of the forest, and several soldiers of the Empire walked out of the space-time gate carrying metal boxes. The picture paused here, and Li Mingze, who saw the whole process, shrank his pupils. Yes, it seems that you are really travelers, but travelers from other time and space. The transparent humanoid creature's tone was flat, and Li Mingze could not hear any emotion in it. What are you? Li Mingze was shocked. He never thought that there was a race that could have the ability to see through time. No, this planet must be under constant surveillance, and what they just saw was just a replay of the video. We are just a group of poor people, the transparent figure sighed softly, and his thoughts began to drift to hundreds of millions of years ago. Our race was born 520 million years ago. Our civilization has developed from primitive tribes to being able to navigate in the universe. As our technology becomes more and more advanced and we control more and more territories, the material we obtain becomes more and more abundant. At this time, our eyes begin to turn to the ethereal road to immortality. As he spoke, Li Mingze felt that the surrounding scenery changed again. And he came to a planet covered by skyscrapers tens of thousands of meters high. We first studied biotechnology, intending to make our bodies immortal in biology, but we found that all organisms have an upper limit to their lifespan. Even if we let the cells in our bodies divide, we will eventually turn into a pool of yellow water after a certain period of time. As he explained, a humanoid creature whose body was not yet transparent appeared in Li Mingze's sight. This creature suddenly turned into a pool of yellow water, and dozens of scientists and medical staff immediately surrounded it. Then, we began to study electronic technology. We hope to upload our consciousness to electronic devices to achieve true immortality. At that time, as long as the hardware can be updated, we can live forever. The picture turned into a laboratory full of technology. An elderly man was lying on the operating table in the laboratory, and a robot was placed next to him. But we found that people who uploaded their consciousness to robots are extremely vulnerable to computer viruses. These viruses can easily turn these people into a pile of scrap metal. The picture turned into a dilapidated warehouse. Garbage trucks dumped countless robots in the warehouse. If Mingze hadn't expected it, these should be immortal people infected with a virus. Finally, 390 million years ago, a scientist in our civilization discovered a way to truly achieve immortality. That is to evolve a species into a higher dimensional creature that is not affected by time. Following the man's voice, a huge square appeared on the screen. An old man was explaining something vividly on the big screen in the square, and the people in the square cheered. From that day on, we retracted the colonies of our civilization back to our home galaxy, and we began to focus all our energy on the research of upgrading the species to four-dimensional life. As tens of millions of years and hundreds of millions of years passed, the research on the sublimation of the species began to slowly progress, and some experiments began to be carried out in secret. The transparent humanoid sighed. In his memory, his civilization changed at this moment. A device called dimensional enhancement was created, because it takes an enormous amount of energy to enhance an object from 2 dimensions to 3 dimensions. Similarly, it is the same to enhance a 3-dimensional creature to 4 dimensions. In order to obtain such a huge amount of energy, we set our sights on this vast universe. We began to extract the energy of the universe and transform everything in the universe into 2 dimensions to release a huge amount of energy to provide to the dimensional enhancement machine, but, in the end, we failed. The energy released by the matter in the universe being reduced to 2 dimensions was far from enough for us to be promoted to the 4-dimensional world. Our dimensional enhancement plan had to be stopped halfway through. We were stuck in the transition stage between 3 dimensions and 4 dimensions. We have gained immortality, the transparent humanoid creature said with a bitter smile. The price of our immortality is that we are bound to our galaxy forever. At the same time, the light representing the upper limit of speed in 3-dimensional space has become our enemy. Too strong a beam of light is fatal to us. We have lost the light, the transparent humanoid creature sighed heavily. Chapter 522 Development Plan shelved. However, as a special form of creature between the 3rd and 4th dimensions, time has lost its effect on us. We can see through time and see what happened anywhere before. We have also mastered the use of dimensions below the 4th dimension, such as our self-defense mechanism, which reduces your soldiers from 3 dimensions to 2 dimensions. The man picked up a stone from the roadside, and under the gaze of everyone, the stone turned into a 2-dimensional plane. Is this the legendary dimensionality reduction attack? Can you turn the entire star system into a 2-dimensional existence? Mingze said with a gleam in his eyes. If he can get this legendary weapon, the strength of the Empire will be further improved. Yes, but, as you can see, your soldier can still reflect light, which means that he is not a purely 2-dimensional existence. He also has some physical properties. The energy released when an object falls from a high dimension to a low dimension is extremely huge, far exceeding the energy released by nuclear fusion. When I knocked him down to 2 dimensions, I kept the energy released in his body. In fact, he is still alive, but he is just living in 2-dimensional space. According to the residual energy sealed in his body, he can survive in the 2-dimensional world for another 300 to 400 years. The transparent man casually grabbed the soldier who was still floating in the air. Everyone could see that the soldier in the 2-dimensional state actually blinked twice. According to what you said, if we reduce a star system to 2 dimensions, the energy released will destroy an entire arm of the Milky Way. Not only that, all superluminal flights within its release range will be ineffective. Under this huge energy impact, no space channel will be able to open. We used this energy when we upgraded our race, but we will not give you the relevant technology. Also, stop any construction on our territory. This universe will grow naturally under our care, but you can come and visit us as neighbors. After the man said this, the surrounding scenery returned to its original state, and everyone returned to the city's road again. We will not continue to build a base in the future. It will become an embassy for our 2 civilizations. Mingze sighed. He didn't expect that the back garden of this empire would have an owner in the end. Fortunately, the other party was trapped in this galaxy. Otherwise his own universe would be in danger. Okay, we are also very happy to meet people from other universes. The transparent man laughed twice and prepared to turn around and leave. Wait, this soldier of ours, Li Mingze pointed to the two-dimensional soldier floating in the air beside him. Just think of this as a gift from our two civilizations for establishing diplomatic relations. An existence based on two-dimensional and three-dimensional is something you can only encounter if you encounter it. Also, I forgot to introduce myself formally just now. The name of our race is God. After the man said this, Li Mingze and several soldiers disappeared on the spot and appeared in the camp. Give up the development plan of this universe. This base will be left as an embassy. Don't provoke this race under any circumstances. You guys, keep an eye on him, and the rest of you will go back with me. Li Mingze pointed to the soldier who was floating in the same place and couldn't move by himself, and said to the others. A few days later, several scientists from the Empire came to the embassy through the wormhole and began to study how to move this two-dimensional soldier. The research soon made progress. Scientists found that the position that could bind the soul was also effective for this two-dimensional existence. So, the next time the space-time transmission sent a storage container in the style of a dormant warehouse, and the soldier in the two-dimensional state was put into the container and sent back to the Imperial Royal Research Institute in the main universe. In a huge conference room, the soldiers in the two-dimensional state were placed in the center of the conference room. Li Mingze walked to the storage container. Captain Da, I hope you can work hard to cooperate with our scientists to release you from this two-dimensional state as soon as possible. The Empire will not forget your contribution to the Empire. I will promote your rank to Major here. When you are released, you will also receive a subsidy of 1 million star coins and 3 years of vacation. Long live the Empire! Li Mingze extended his hand and saluted, then patted the glass cover of the container and turned away. It can be seen that although the soldier in the container cannot speak, his mouth is still moving constantly. From the shape of his mouth, it can be seen that there are no exceptions to the words such as long live the Empire and long live the Emperor. After Li Mingze left, a group of scientists surrounded him and moved the container to the laboratory. The research on the dimension also began at this moment. The Empire has high hopes for this research project. According to Li Mingze, if you want people, give them people, if you want money, give them money, and you must research and produce results that can be used in the shortest time. Since PX0006Q has been determined to be an owned universe, the corresponding development plans have all been cancelled, and the original E-expanded teleportation hall has been vacated to connect to the next new universe. 1 month after giving up the development of the 06Q universe, Li Mingze decided to open another universe. The originally planned back garden was abandoned, and the 09E universe was full of unknowns. The Empire now urgently needs a world that can really be used as a back garden to deal with possible Zerg invasions in the future. Like the previous times, Li Mingze and the scientists gathered again in a space station several light years away from the shuttle center for remote control. However, unlike the previous times, this time it was no longer clone soldiers who entered the new universe to open the way. After the profound lessons of the previous times, Li Mingze realized that letting humans as pioneers was too fragile, and these human soldiers would be wiped out with the slightest threat. Therefore, this time it was 10 bionic people who opened the way. The fully simulated skin was covered with the molecular robots and skeletons made of ring-world alloys. The alien artificial muscles combined with molecular robots provided these 10 bionic people with unparalleled strength and recovery ability. The micro-reactor driven by a trace of antimatter can not only provide inexhaustible energy, but also be used as a small strategic weapon at a critical moment. Not only that, these bionic people also wear the most advanced power armor of the Empire. In addition, the shoulder-mounted nuclear missile launcher can also provide them with unparalleled destructive power. Chapter 523 Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau. The space-time channel is ready to open, all personnel are ready. With a countdown sound on the radio, 10 bionic people were swallowed by the white space-time gate. On the night of August 1, 2018, in the suburbs of Xinghuadan, a white ball of light suddenly appeared in the air half a meter high, and 10 bionic people wearing silver power armor fell out of the white ball of light. What the FK? A black man happened to pass by the white ball of light and burst into a swear. Terminator. The black man hid behind a car and looked at the 10 bionic people who fell to the ground with his mouth wide open. He quietly pulled out the pistol inserted in his waist, held the handle of the gun nervously with both hands and took 2 deep breaths. A crisp sound of loading came from the back of the car. Hearing the sound of loading the gun in his hand, the black man felt a chill rising from the soles of his feet. Without time to see how the 10 Terminators reacted, the black man ran towards the end of the street. 10 bionic men who had just arrived at the destination and were collecting information about the surrounding environment were suddenly attracted by the sound of loading guns. Start scanning. The target seems to have witnessed a process of time travel. The target is carrying weapons, and the threat level of weapons is very low. Eliminate them immediately. 10 bionic men activated the cloaking device on the power armor, and 10 figures disappeared in a wave of water. The 500 million tiny pixels on the outer shell of the power armor can display the images in all directions of the power armor, and automatically correct the visual distortion, making the stealth of the power armor reach 99%. 10 almost invisible figures quickly approached the running black man. With a bang, the black man was knocked unconscious by a bionic man's heavy punch. According to the order of His Majesty, we should give priority to collecting information about this universe, the bionic man who knocked the black man unconscious said to his teammates around him. Agreed, let's see what is stored in his brain first. The captain of the bionic men pressed his palm on the black man's brain, and a large amount of data flowed from the black man's brain into the bionic man's brain. The processors of the 10 bionic people were running frantically, and they began to obtain the worldview of this world from the memory of this person. This is a country called Bald Eagle, which is the most powerful country on this planet called Blue Star. In addition, there are several countries on this planet that can barely fight it, Xia country and Shang country. Well, the current time is 2018-08-01, and the civilization is still in the primitive civilization period without leaving the mother planet. Although the situation in the universe is unclear, this place is very suitable for being a colony of the Empire. The captain of the bionic people took his hand away from the black man's brain. At this time, the black man's brain had turned into a mass of paste. The excessive reading of data made the brain burn itself into paste. We go deep into the city to get more information. Number 2 will follow me to Xinghuotan, and the others will go to other surrounding cities in groups of 2. After the captain assigned the tasks, the 10 figures were divided into 5 groups and ran in different directions. The next morning, a scream woke up the residents in the community. As police cars roared in, the place where the black man fell was surrounded by several policemen. He was holding a weapon, and there was blood coming out of his nose, eyes, and ears. There was no external injury, so suicide can be ruled out. A forensic doctor lifted the black man's head and looked at it carefully. The white substance mixed in the blood is brain tissue. We need to send it for autopsy to know the details. The forensic doctor carefully laid the body on the ground. Soon, an ambulance roared away from the scene. Just as the ambulance was about to enter the city, it found that the road ahead was suddenly blocked by 3 black SUVs. The ambulance slowly slowed down and stopped in front of the roadblock. Several men in black suits came up holding a black certificate. Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau, we have taken over this case. Here are the relevant documents. You can leave. A man in black waved his hand, and the back door of the ambulance was opened from the outside. The body of the black man was carried by 2 men in black suits and placed on the black SUV that blocked the road. Let's go. After looking at the medical staff with a strange look, the 3 SUVs started the car, turned the car head around, and roared away. On a small island in the Pacific Ocean, an osprey descended from the sky, and several staff members pushed out a sealed metal box and sent it into a hole opened on the cliff. After passing through several sealed doors, the metal box was sent to the elevator and sank underground. What is it sent this time? A staff member asked several soldiers who were responsible for escorting the metal box. A body of a man who died at a special energy burst point may be of some help in the research of this special energy burst point. The soldier glanced at the metal box and replied, "Send it to laboratory number 3. The staff member nodded. A few minutes later, on the operating table of laboratory number 3, 4 researchers in isolation suits carefully cut open the forehead of the black man with a cutter. After opening a small hole, the researchers could easily see the brain pulp in the black man's skull that had been crushed into mud. A researcher carefully extracted some brain tissue with a sample extractor and put it into the detector. After a while, the detector sounded an alarm. This damage is caused by the brain extracting a large amount of data in a short period of time. This kind of damage usually comes from brain reading technology. We can be sure that all the memories of the victim have been extracted from his brain. Temporarily classify this incident as a secondary threat and send a task force to investigate. The researcher put down the tools in his hand and said to the staff at the door in a heavy tone. According to their experience, there are only a few situations where data needs to be read from a person's mind. Either the person whose mind is being extracted has important information, such as a huge bank deposit password, or there are extraterrestrial life forms that have landed on the blue planet and want to obtain the basic situation of the blue planet by reading the memory. Or there are monsters or aliens that have been hiding on the blue planet for a long time and have not been in contact with society for a long time. They hope to quickly understand the current era by reading the memory. And judging from the identity information of this black man, it is impossible for him to be the first type. There is no doubt that the rest must be the second and third types. Someone wants to obtain information about this world by reading the memory. According to the cases they have handled before, this situation is generally a level 1 to level 2 threat. Chapter 524 Earth in the Parallel Universe. 3 days later, at the American Command Center of the Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau, 3 A-level supervisors gathered in the conference room. In the past 3 days, we have found victims who died in the same way as the first victim in various cities in North America. They are evenly distributed in 5 cities in North America. We have sent 2,000 non-staff and E-level personnel to these 5 cities, but have found nothing. An A-level supervisor cited and threw the information on the table. We have begun to contact the local state government, but they have not gained anything either. No figure was found at the scene of the crime, no suspicious traces, and even the satellite did not find anything abnormal. Another supervisor also shook his head. This case is expected to become another unsolved case. I wonder if it will affect the financial assistance from the Bald Eagle country to us next year. The third supervisor pinched his brows with a headache. While this group of people were worried about this matter, the 10 androids had completed the collection of information about this world, and 5 of them had begun to return to their starting point. Since special energy is difficult to detect, the smallest area that can be determined is a 100-kilometer diameter area. Therefore, the Abnormal Affairs Management Bureau can only monitor this area with satellites 24 hours a day. But what they don't know is that Mingze has already considered the possibility of this situation. 2 of the bionic people have simulators of energy fluctuations in the space-time channel in their bodies. And 2 other bionic people are equipped with special shielding devices for space fluctuations. 2 of the 5 bionic people who returned to the starting point this time were bionic people carrying shielding devices. The 2 bionic people carrying energy fluctuation simulators have already headed to other continents in various ways. 2 days later, the space-time channel returning to the main universe of the Empire reappeared under the cover of 2 bionic people carrying shielding devices. This time it did not send out any signals. At the same time, the other 2 bionic people who were hundreds or thousands of kilometers away turned on the energy fluctuation simulators in their bodies. When the energy fluctuation simulator was turned on, the people of the Special Event Management Bureau began to move out and rush to 2 locations. The 3 bionic people on the other side stepped into the space-time gate that had just been opened and returned to the Empire. In the main universe where the Empire is located, when the 3 bionic people entered the shuttle hall from the time-space gate, all the information they obtained had been uploaded to Tianyi's database, and Tianyi retrieved all the information at the first time. Your Majesty, you may be very interested in this universe. Tianyi appeared behind Mingze and whispered. Oh? Why am I interested? Mingze turned around and asked in confusion. Your Majesty, this universe retains the Earth of 2018. This Earth is exactly the same as the Earth you traveled to, including those popular stars. Tianyi blinked. Really? When was this universe copied from the main universe, and it can maintain a high degree of consistency? Mingze said excitedly. It may be a time-space anchor point caused by other civilizations in this universe, which has little to do with the Earth. So this Earth can be preserved. Tianyi thought for a while and replied. Let's go and see. Mingze's interest suddenly increased. What he missed most was the original Earth, but unfortunately he left the Earth and came to the Sith Star in 2019. Since then, when he returned to Earth, he was completely different. He could no longer find the feeling he had at the beginning. This time, he would make good use of this opportunity to experience life on Earth again. How long will it take for the first Galaxy Games to be held? And when will the space-time transfer station be completed? Mingze suddenly thought of 2 major things to be done in the Empire, and he could not help but stop. It will take another 2 years to hold the games, and it will take another year for the space-time transfer station to be completely completed. Your Majesty, you can take a vacation. Are you still worried about me taking charge of the overall situation in the Empire? Tianyi patted his chest. Okay, I will leave Qiyu, Monica, and Eva in this universe to help you, and I can go alone. Mingze nodded. He also wanted to take the opportunity to take a vacation and return to his original life. Your Majesty, you can go alone, but you must bring your guards with you. They will protect your safety in secret. After saying that, Tianyi clapped his hands. 10 silver figures suddenly appeared in the hall, but soon their skin changed from silver to normal skin color, and several different clothes appeared on their bodies. They have just been upgraded. They are liquid robot guards composed of molecular robots built with metal from the ring world. With 10 of them, they can easily destroy an army on Earth. With the 7 bionic people left on Earth, your safety can be initially guaranteed. We will continue to send troops to that universe in the later stage. Tianyi showed a concerned expression and helped Mingze to straighten his collar. By the way, name this universe the second world, and don't use codes anymore. Mingze suddenly remembered something and said to Tianyi. Okay, Your Majesty, you should be careful in another universe. Tianyi hugged Mingze and turned into liquid and disappeared into the room. Mingze sighed, looked around the scenery in the palace, picked up a backpack containing some necessary supplies from the bed beside him and left the palace. In the time-space shuttle hall, Mingze, 10 liquid robot guards and 3 bionic people stood in the hall. Because they did not carry any luggage, the original upper limit of 10 people was reduced to 14. I will come back often. You should wait for me at home. I hope to see the rapid development of the Empire under your leadership. Goodbye, my lovers. Mingze waved to the Tianyi people standing behind the isolation glass. The time-space channel is ready to open. Countdown, 10, 9, as the countdown ended, a white light swallowed Mingze and the 13 guards. In the suburbs of Dunshenhu in the second world, Mingze and the 13 guards appeared on the ground. However, this time, because 2 bionic people were waiting here in advance, no one could witness this magical scene. You 3 will sneak into several developed countries in the world to collect information and make money. You 10 liquid robots will follow me and live as normal people. You will take care of your own living expenses. Mingze waved to all the robots. Mingze had no doubt that these bionic robots and liquid robots could disguise themselves as normal people and survive. These robots with low-level artificial intelligence were basically no different from normal people, except that they appeared a little colder. Chapter 525 Another Mingze. After receiving Mingze's order, the bionic people left the place quickly. They will disguise themselves as various identities and live in several developed countries to earn basic funds for Mingze's life and provide various intelligence. Mingze took out a small 3D printing device from the backpack behind him, and passport and ID card information began to be printed out one by one. Of course, these documents are fake, and Mingze has not yet entered the network of this world to add his identity. However, one of the bionic people has already executed this order. It only takes 2 or 3 hours for the identity information of Mingze and all the bionic people to be entered into the population information database of this world. Your Majesty, where are we going? A bionic person who is responsible for staying to take care of Mingze's life asked carefully. I said, call me Master, we will go to this Xia country next. I want to go home and take a look. Mingze pointed to the rooster-shaped country on the map. Okay, Master, prepare to activate the traffic mode. The bionic person said to the 10 liquid robots on the side. The 10 liquid robots began to merge with each other, and soon, a small spaceship that could accommodate 2 people appeared on the spot. These robots actually have this function. Mingze stared at the small spaceship transformed from 10 guards in amazement. Molecular robots give them the ability to reorganize into any object, so a spaceship is no problem. The bionic man who served as Mingze's butler nodded. Inform Tianyi later and ask them to send me a special vehicle in the next batch. It's psychologically uncomfortable to use these guards as a car. Mingze waved his hand and boarded the spaceship. The bionic butler smiled helplessly and boarded the cockpit of the spaceship. The spaceship circled away from the ground and soared into the sky. Because of the stealth material, the spaceship was not detected by any radar, and Mingze and his 2 companions were not. The 12 people flew in the direction of Xiago. 3 hours later, Mingze's original rental house. Mingze, at this time and space, who was playing on the computer suddenly heard a knock at the door. Who is it? Li Mingze quit the game in annoyance and got up and walked towards the door. Mr. Li Mingze, this is your express delivery. Please sign for it. A man with a hat and unclear face stood in front of the door, holding a large box half a person's height. Oh, I don't remember buying such a big box. Li Mingze signed his name on the express delivery slip with some doubt. Have a nice day, the courier smiled with an ambiguous meaning, put the box on the floor of Li Mingze's rental house, and turned away. Who bought this thing and sent it to me? It's so heavy. How did the courier lift it? After Li Mingze found that he couldn't lift the box from the ground, he dragged the box to the side of the coffee table in confusion, took a fruit knife from the kitchen and began to cut the tape on the top of the box bit by bit. When he opened the box, the things in the box made his heart beat faster, as if his heart was about to jump out of his chest. The box was filled with cash, including US dollars and euros, as well as a USB flash drive and a small suitcase. After calming down, Li Mingze carefully opened the suitcase. At the top of the suitcase was a thick document. And under the document were passports of various styles and other items. Dear Mr. Li Mingze, you have been chosen by our master to be the heir to his estate. This estate includes cash worth $10 million and Bitcoin worth $100 million. If you want to get this estate, then you must use the new identity we prepared for you to live in a small town abroad for 5 years, and you cannot come back for any reason. Li Mingze carefully read every word on the document, and a look of surprise appeared on his face. He thought that a box of cash was the biggest surprise, but he didn't expect that the small USB flash drive also stored Bitcoin worth $100 million. What period of time must not come back? Only with so much money can a ghost come back. Unexpectedly, Li Mingze, also had a lucky day. If there is no problem, please set off immediately after reading the document. There is a speedboat that can help you smuggle out of the country waiting for you at the following coordinates. Please do not take any of your current belongings, including your ID card and various items. Please leave them at home, otherwise, we will take back your inheritance of these inheritances. Li Mingze read the end of the document at this time. He frowned in confusion. What did this group of people want to do with his identity? However, after he inserted the USB drive into the computer and checked the Bitcoin inside, all doubts were thrown behind him. No matter what they wanted to do with his identity, he didn't want it and went to enjoy it himself. Li Mingze took out a suitcase from the closet and began to pack money, and the USB drive containing $100 million in Bitcoin was hung around his neck. With a heavy slamming sound, Li Mingze's figure disappeared in the corridor. At this time, the figure of Li Mingze, Empire Universe, slowly walked down from upstairs. After reaching out and opening the door with a master key, Li Mingze walked into the rental house in his memory. This familiar feeling is really great. Li Mingze threw himself on the sofa in a big letter shape. Everything around him made him miss it so much. Your Majesty, why did you give so many things to your parallel universe self? The bionic butler walked in from the door in a courier uniform and closed the door. You can't think like that. There are countless me in countless universes. If I meet this kind of me who poses no threat, I will definitely lend a hand. I still think I gave him too little. Maybe I can rule the Sith Empire because of the help given to me by a powerful me who can travel through time and space. So, as long as it doesn't threaten my survival, I must help them get out of their mediocre lives. Li Mingze sighed and looked up at the sky in the distance. He didn't know if there was such a Li Mingze who might have ruled the universe in the past who had visited his home, heard his wishes and helped him realize them. Maybe the him now is silently caring about his development? Anything can happen in this magical world, right? Your Majesty is indeed a wise man, the bionic butler praised and began to clean up the house. Oh, by the way, put the $100 million worth of Bitcoin I just calculated on the market and sell it bit by bit. I also need some money to live here. Li Mingze crossed his legs on the table. Yes, Master, the bionic butler nodded. End of this chapter. Thank you very much for reaching the end. Don't forget to like. Looking for more exclusive content and immediate access? Subscribe to our Patreon. Remember, every like, subscription, or donation encourages us to continue. Thanks to everyone. See you in the next video.